So we need Whitelock and green. There is green. And did you see Councilmember Whitelock's request for the link? Oh, must have, because there she is. All right, well, it is 5:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, so it is time for City Council meeting. Welcome to City Council meeting for tonight, November 18th, 2020. All members of the council are present this evening. We're also joined by Mayor Dirk Burton, CAO Corbin Lee, various other members of staff, and a few folks who will be contributing to the conversation tonight. We're going to start with our notice of declaration. Let me just double check one thing first. Yep, we are recording and we are streaming. Awesome. Okay. So, due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan City Council has determined that conducting this City Council meeting at City Hall or at another anchor location is likely to contribute to the spread of COVID-19 and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-2074, the West Jordan City Council hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. This determination will expire in 30 days from the date the chair of the West Jordan City Council signs the written determination, and that happened on November 12th, so just about a week ago. So with that, we're going to dive into our work session for this evening. We've got 4 items up. The first up is going to be conversation about community cats. And Mr. Anderson will facilitate this. And I'm assuming we'll need Mr. Etchell from Animal Control brought over.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else for this part?
If Rob Wall, I don't know. I didn't see if you had Rob over there, but if there's legal questions, you may have Rob be available.
Yeah, I do not see Rob yet, nor anybody from legal, though they do like to make an entrance, so I'll keep an eye for him.
Well, hopefully I can help a little, but thank you, Council. I was asked to bring this to the full Council just to receive kind of direction from the Council on what you would like to do, if anything. As each of you are aware, the Council has received several mailed letters and there's been a couple phone calls related to community cats. And for the benefit of those listening, a community cat is a feral or free-roaming cat that is without visibly discernible or microchip owner identification of any kind and has been sterilized, vaccinated, or ear-tipped. So the definition in the state, when you look at Utah Code annotated 11-46-303, these are definitions which we also have in our West Jordan City Code in 6.3A1. And go ahead to the next slide. These are the definitions that I think are important for the dialogue. So we talked about the community cat definition. We talked about a community cat caretaker, which is any person other than an owner who provides food, water, or shelter to a community cat or a community cat colony. And the community cat program, that would be like our the city's TNR or trap, neuter, release program that they have. And the community cat sponsor is any person or organization that traps the cat, sterilizes, and vaccinates, which we currently have. The city has an MOU with Best Friends Animal Society, which is our community cat sponsor. So a couple things to note in state code on 11-46-303, subsection 2 indicates that a community cat is exempt from licensing and feeding bans. So just be aware of that as you have this dialogue. And in 303 subsection 3, it states a community cat sponsor or caretaker do not have custody of any cat in a community cat colony. So just because someone feeds a cat or chooses to sponsor a community cat program to help trap feral cats, just by them doing that does not create a custody with the cat. So go ahead to the next slide, please. Thank you. So the history in West Jordan City, back in March 9th, 2016, there was information presented to the council about trap, neuter, release, or what's called TNR. And after some dialogue, the council directed staff to study implementing a possible trap, neuter, release program within the city of West Jordan. Prior to that, as I looked at the minutes from that meeting, the minutes state that prior to the TNR program, approximately 51% of the cats were euthanized. The council had no opposition to see about implementing the TNR program in the city. So then fast forward 11 months to February of 2017, there was an item on the agenda of that meeting that added amendments to West Jordan Code 6-3A in support of implementing a trap, neuter, release program within the city. And that motion passed 7-0. So what February 8th did with Ordinance 1708 was created the possibility of having a trap, neuter, release program within the city code. There were a number of a number of public comments made in support of implementing a TNR program, and that motion to adopt Ordinance 1708 passed 7-0. We then moved to later that year, approximately 6 months later, where the council adopted an MOU between the city and the Best Friend Animal Society to provide the TNR program. In other words, to be that community cat sponsor for the community cats. And in talking with Dan Etchell, who is the manager of animal control, he had mentioned, and I'm hoping I get this right, the Best Friends Animal Society trapped 457 cats within West Jordan between 2017 and 2019. So from the time the program started until the end of 2019, there was 457 cats in the trap, neuter, release, and there was no intervention from West Jordan Animal Services. These were people that were contacted. They set a trap, they neutered the cats, and then released them back into the community. The numbers I also received are, there's 141 cats year to date that have gone through the shelter. And since this program began, there's been 555 cats. So almost 1,000 cats between going through the shelter and what Best Friends has done with the TNR program as far as the numbers that I can provide. So if you can go to the next slide, Chair. So the spay neuter release, or TNR, is currently partnered with Best Friends Animal Society, who help manage the spay neuter release program. Best Friends provides all the cat traps, and as I mentioned, the 450 some odd ones that they've done, aside from using any services with animal control. By comparison, excuse me, animal control estimates it's about 87 cents per cat to be euthanized. So if all 141 cats that have been caught as part of the program this year were to be euthanized, it would have a cost of about $122.67. So there is the history of the trap, neuter, release program through the shelter. This is outside of what Best Friend Animal Society has done. So you can see there was a big jump in 2018. That was the first full year of the program, down to 144 in 19, and will be between those two numbers in 2020. Interestingly, as I read the minutes back in 2016, the estimation was that there would be about 200 cats that would go through the program each year, is what the estimate was. So it's about 75% or so of meeting that goal. So tonight you have Dan Etchell, who can answer some additional questions. One other thing to be aware of is I talked with Arlen, I can't remember his name. I talked with Arlen, who is Arlen Bradshaw, and he recently became the former Northern Utah rep for Best Friends. He indicated that these figures that are before you are similar in different areas. For example, he mentioned that Davis County, with about 3 times the population of West Jordan, had about 350 cats as compared to our 140 cats. So he thinks this is reasonable success. One other thing to be aware of is cats tend to migrate back to where they have a known food source or shelter. And so should cats be relocated outside the area, many will attempt to return to where they have a known community colony. Arlen did mention at Best Friends that they have had some limited success by an additional cost, setting up food and shelter stations in other areas to try and help the cats relocate if necessary. I didn't delve into the costs of that with him. So the other thing to be mindful of is, as a community cat population decreases through euthanasia, the remaining cats generally produce at a higher rate to compensate for that decrease. And then if you want to go to the next slide, please.
This is the last one.
This is the last one, and these are basically, when I did a search for community cat in our code, these deal with the licensing, these deal with animals running at large and animals that can be impounded. So these are the 5 sections of code, and I've also listed the state code. And if you have questions, the chair can click on those links, which will take you to the West Jordan code and the state code as you have this dialogue. So I think the staff isn't making any recommendations to the council. They're just seeking further direction, such as maintain the current program, discuss modifications to the current program, terminate the program. If the council chooses to terminate the MOU with Best Friends, it does have a 30-day notice. And so with that, I turn it back to you, Chair, for the council to have some dialogue on what they would like. And if there's questions, Dan Etchell is here. Maybe one of the attorneys is here now. If not, I can help where I can, although I'm not an attorney.
Councilmember Whitelock, was it you that had requested this to be brought to the council?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, if you'd like to take a moment, let us know what your thoughts are and what sort of insight or direction you'd like from the council. Please take the floor.
Thank you. So I'm going to give a little bit of history, and then, because I am a voice for our residents, I am going to read a letter from a couple that have been very instrumental in trying to improve their neighborhood. I don't really remember dates well, but a few months back, the mayor had a town hall in the Jensen's backyard, which I and Councilmember Pack attended. And at that time, what I heard is that these people are caring people. They don't want to see animals hurt, but they're getting very tired. They're in an older neighborhood. And so most in attendance were elderly, and they're getting tired because their neighborhood just has too many cats. And they've got a lot of community cats, and there are a few people that feed them, but they just feel like their neighborhood is overran. And some of the stories were, a lady has some of those big barrels in her front yard that she's tried to put as planters, but every year the cats use them as a litter box. Many of them have complained that they have sandboxes, but they can no longer allow their grandchildren to use those sandboxes because there are just too many cats, and they're just tired. And so my hope is that, and I understand that maybe the cats try to go back to where their food is, but my hope is that we can add something to what we've got, because I don't think they're, and from their voicemails, it certainly didn't indicate that either. And none of the letters that I've read have indicated that that they really want to kill the cats, but they just want help in their neighborhood. So, and I actually know that that has been an issue in my neighborhood in the past. We also had a large colony of cats, and many neighbors were getting frustrated, and they weren't happy with what they were told from the city. So I would like to propose that we add something to our ordinance where if there are X amount of cats that have been trapped and released and returned in in a specific amount of time, that there becomes a point where we need to do something for these people, in my opinion. And I think that's the way that we could maybe handle it. So next, I'd like to read this letter, and it is from Max Jensen and neighbors in the Mountain View Estates subdivision. After an increasing population of feral cats has inundated our neighborhood over the past several years, a section of the residents in the Mountain View Estates appealed to the mayor for help, commencing with a letter with pictures attached on June 10th, 2020. In early July, we received a letter from Keenan Price with an attached letter from Dan Etchell, Animal Services Manager, describing TNR. He also suggested this issue also occurred in our community under trap and euthanize programs. After a short stay in the hospital, I responded to Mayor Burton on July 21st, 2020, and provided him with copies of the letters mentioned above and related the discussion which I had had with Michael DiTullio of Best Friends Animal Society when he personally came to our neighborhood and talked to us. In the letter to the mayor, we contested the merits of the trap, neuter, and return program, and also the lack of city zoning regulations to control feral cats. The number of cats keeps escalating profusely. People are trapping the same cats multiple times, but returning them back into the same neighborhood guarantees they could live and have a home in our neighborhood for a lifespan of 12 to 15 years. More people have started feeding the feral cats so they won't starve to death. And that's all in caps. Since our meeting with the mayor, it appears that the number of wild cat feeders has risen to 6 that we know of in nearby residential properties. At the same time, they are rampantly destroying our sand piles, playground equipment, flower beds, lawn areas that can no longer be used for children to play on, and demolishing patio furniture. Controlling the number of feral cats by city zoning regulations is perhaps the only long-term answer. Making feral cats exempt from these running at large requirements makes no sense. Please change city zoning ordinances to state in effect that people who feed feral cats are required mandated to restrain them with pens and fencing to their own property, like is currently done with other animals, and set limits on the numbers allowed. Please remember a city official at our meeting stated, "Feed a cat, own a cat." That wasn't me. Side note, that was not me. Veterinarians indicate that neighborhood people feeding feral cats will make it much more difficult for effective trapping success. Changing city zoning regulations, backpedaling to euthanizing may be cheaper, and or relocating the feral cats by effective trapping may be the only alternatives to actually reducing their numbers. Giving the person who trapped them a choice of whether they are relocated or euthanized by the city might also be considered as an option. Ironically, we are now aware of 3 additional colonies, pockets of feral cats that have surfaced in and around our area in West Jordan, other than those discussed with the mayor in our meeting. The mayor and each council member should each have received several communications on this issue, including some photos and reasons why TNR is not working. It became obvious from the questionnaire we sent out, and the mayor responded to it, that this festering problem has never become an agenda item for city council. We are now requesting that it become an item. We know that it is a difficult issue. The mayor has recently helped us with relocating our cats, inasmuch as we have worked on this problem since June 2020, and copies of all communications between us and the city could be provided to you. Should you so desire, feel free that you might well evaluate the long-term problem and ramifications, lest it should infest the entire city. So again, I feel like we can and should do something, because I do think that some neighborhoods could get overrun. And while animals may try to go back to where they were fed, they may also stay away. So I'd now like to hear what the rest of the council has to add.
I don't see any raised hands, so I'll jump in. Mr. Anderson, as I tried to look through the sections of code that have been provided, is there something out here that prohibits the cats from being returned to the same place where they were captured for the TNR? Or do we have something that specifically prohibits the ability to relocate community cats?
Not that I have read about. So no, I haven't seen anything that indicates that.
So I know when we had our earlier conversations on a prior council, there was attention given to a statement that after the cats are captured, if they're treated and then released elsewhere, it creates a void, and then other cats come in. So having some that are there that are sterile and won't reproduce over the long term is more beneficial than just clearing everything out. But yeah, if we don't have anything that prohibits the relocation of cats, I would definitely be supportive of perhaps encouraging that practice where it becomes an issue. Councilmember Green, what are your thoughts?
Whoops, I have to take myself off mute. Wait a minute.
And you just put yourself back on mute.
Boy, that's weird. Off again, on again. I'd be interested to know some costs. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, what the city's role should be in this. And obviously we have some, but I also trying to figure out, and so did I see, I saw Dan Etchell on as an attendee. I'm wondering, and the other question that I have is, okay, we have a complaint that there are a bunch of cats. I wonder what the quantification of that is. I mean, if we're talking about 15 cats and it's going to cost us $150,000 to deal with 15 cats, I don't know if that's going to be an appropriate expenditure of money. So I'm I'm more curious to know how many cats we're talking about, in what kind of in what kind of footprint, or is that paw print, and costs involved with this, so that we can. I get that there are some people that are frustrated, but I don't want to just say, well, we've got to do something if that something is going to be ineffective. And so I want to make sure that what we're doing is going to be accepted practice, good practice. I know that in the letter that Councilmember Whitelock said, well, if you feed them, I mean, the bottom line, the bottom line to the comment was, if you feed them, you own them. Well, as a public policy issue, I don't think we can declare that. And I can tell you, I don't think I would declare that. And then if we're talking about, and let me just go into one, and this is where we can also ask Dan this question. In some neighborhoods, and I will tell you that in mine, where we live closer to the Jordan River, we have, there's a raccoon that runs through this neighborhood that's got to be 4 foot tall and 3 feet wide. He's so fat. Killed one of my chickens. and we have skunks, and we have some of those other kinds of things. And if we focus, the question is if we're going to deal with cats, and I think the city policy is right now, that's where I'd like to jump in on this one too, is that the policy on the city is that we don't do a whole lot with raccoons or skunks either. And if that's the case, how do we differentiate from all the animals? And so that's where I'd like to hear some data and current city practices.
Mr. Etchell, do you want to take a moment and respond?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Councilmember Green. So just to go back to one of your first questions, you were talking about cost with this. Really, there is, because we have the MOU with Best Friends, there is no cost to the city as we operate this program. All spay neuter vaccination costs are paid by them. We see no invoices, have nothing to do with that. In fact, it's actually the opposite. The city actually benefits even further than not paying for the spay and neuter of these cats, because for approximately the last year, we have also, as we have coordinated these spays and neuters through the Jordan Applied Technology Center, the cost for the cats of our friendly adoptable cats is being covered by them as well. So it's actually saving the city quite a bit of money at this time. And then to the issue of relocating cats, I think it is important to note that the program used to stand for trap, neuter, release, and they changed it to trap, neuter, return, because there was the emphasis that the cats should ideally go back to the location where they came from. One of the main reasons for that is really this isn't just a West Jordan problem. This is a world problem, the nation problem. Our neighboring cities have cat problems, and I think we wouldn't be too happy if we found that West Valley was relocating their cats into West Jordan as part of their program, and we were relocating cats over to Midvale and so on. So by best practice, we don't typically move these issues around. However, with extreme circumstances, like has been discussed with the Jensens, there can be some exceptions made, and I think that can be appropriate to try and minimize the numbers. That's why at this point, we are making an exception and are relocating cats from that area to try and reduce the numbers that are there. And then to the last issue with looking at cats compared to raccoons and skunks. Right now, no, we don't currently euthanize raccoons and skunks as the city, but we do a tremendous amount with cats. At this point, I think it's fair to say that they're looked at very differently, and either we are receiving them in the shelter, we're making sure they're spayed and neutered, vaccinated for public health and return to the area, or Best Friends is assisting with that. But so there is quite a distinction, I think, between the cats and those nuisance wildlife animals.
Well, if we were talking about, I mean, what numbers are we talking? How many cats are we talking about in this? I think it's the Mountain View Estates area. Mm-hmm. And if we were to, let's say, substantially reduce the population in that area, what would the cost be to the city? Because obviously we're going to have to put some manpower on that to catch all these cats. So I'm just wondering what the number of cats is and what the cost would be.
Wait, I don't think anybody's asking the city to capture the cats. The residents are willing to do that, which they're doing. They're just asking, hey, we have so many right now. Can we please not have them return to our neighborhood? And so I really don't see what any cost other than, because Best Friends, the only cost our city incurs, and correct me, Mr. Etchell, if I'm wrong, but we do pay for the traps. Our residents go to animal services. They pick up the traps. They set the traps. Then Best Friends comes and gets them. And they take care of the cats. And so I don't see how it would cost us any more than it currently is to have something that triggers at this amount or this many issues in a geographic area, that instead of those cats being returned to that area, that they get relocated somewhere else. And I'm not saying in another city. Our city's pretty big, and we still have a lot of empty land. I think there's a lot of opportunity to relocate them. And I don't think it's an issue of funding, because I just don't think it will cost that much. Mr. Etchell, can you help if I'm erred in some way?
That's right. Yeah, I don't see any cost to the city. So Best Friends is not the ones responding to these. It is our staff. We are the ones that are currently picking them up from the Jensen's neighborhood. And then we're either directly relocating or coordinating with Best Friends to try and relocate them. But no, they're not responding out or having direct dealings with this overall.
Okay. Councilmember Lamb has been patiently waiting with his hand up. We can go to him and just wanted to quickly check in on the time so council's aware we do have another longer item coming up after this. But
Councilmember Whitelock, can you tell me real quick, what's the area that this is where these people are having issues?
South of 9,000, between 27 and 32.
Okay, so it's on the west side, so it's in a fairly populated area as far as, you know, homes and stuff, right? That's not an area of farmland, correct?
They do have, a lot of those homes are acre lots, and there is a horse trail, but yeah, it's mostly homes. It's right by Jonathan Rogers area.
Oh, okay. You mean, okay, anyway, I won't say anything else. So this is interesting. I remember watching this back when we could actually go to city council, go to the city council chambers. And my first thought was, you're going to make these people happy because they'll be feral cats. But within a year or so, you're going to be having people call us saying, get rid of the feral cats. So here we are. I guess I predicted that correctly. Now, Councilmember White, like I'm with you and with those that are, you know, kind of not liking it. If I had a feral cat issue in my neighborhood, I wouldn't be happy. Luckily, I don't. But I do know I have a friend of mine in West Jordan. I won't say what location, but I know that she has a neighbor that loves feral cats, but she hates those cats because those cats go into her yard and mess up her yard. So you got the one next door that hates them and the one next door that loves them. And so you've got a 50-50 going on. It's a hard thing, I think, for us as council members to say, what do we do? Do we make the one side happy or the other side happy? Because I'm with these neighbors that don't want them. I wouldn't want them in my yard or in my neighborhood. But if I had a farmland or acre lots, stuff like that, I understand why you'd want them to control the mice population. I guess what I'm trying to get to is we have an ordinance here that's already been set to allow the feral cats, and that's why it's gotten to where it's at. Now, how can we control that, but still keep those that are happy, keep those that want to keep the feral cats to be happy as well? And obviously, we're not going to make that decision tonight, but there's got to be, I think there's got to be a go between where we can at least look in, at least in this area, because I haven't heard of many other areas from what I know of. Only this one area has come to us and talked about it. What can we do in that one area that is having the bigger issues to stop the feral cats as a city council and as a city, and to help them out? And I'm willing to do what I can as a council member, along with Councilmember Whitelock and the others that have been working on this, to see what we can do to kind of lessen the population in their area so that they aren't having to call City Hall and say, please, please help me. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
So my question on this is, if in this form of government, is this something that requires a legislative solution, or is this something that requires an executive administrative solution? Where community cats have been recognized under state code, there's certain certain things that are set at that level. I don't know that we could necessarily preempt that and say, I mean, I know no one's proposing this, and this is kind of going to another extreme, but let's say we don't allow community cats in West Jordan. Is that something we could do, or are we preempted by state code? So I guess my question is, rather than looking and trying to find a solution for the problem, before we get to that point, try and confirm whose court the solution for the problem would fall to. If it's something that legislatively needs to be updated, such as an allowance in code to relocate the cats. That would clearly be us, but it doesn't sound like we have that requirement. So it looks like, Mayor, how did you not end up as a panelist? Let me switch that. It looks like the mayor was raising his hand to add a comment. So let's, did that work, Mayor?
Yes, that's working. Thank you for letting me come back. I got bumped out for a minute. So as for relocating it, I believe that is within the administrative authority. So we have already done that. We are relocating it for that one particular neighborhood. If we were to do anything different or more, then I would need some direction from the council, which is why it's in your court at this. If there's something different you want done.
I see Mr. Wall's microphone is no longer muted. Mr. Wall, did you have something to add there too?
Only if you want me to answer a question.
Please. And then we'll go to Councilmember Lamb after you.
I'm not sure you can outlaw community cats because feral cats are going to go where they want to go. The issue before you is if you have the community cat program, if you will, is that what you do with them once they are captured. And that is within your discretion. Legislatively, it would require some adjustments to the city code depending on what you wanted to do with them.
Okay, so as I've heard the conversation tonight, it almost seemed like a separate issue that while we do have the community cat program that allows for trap, neuter release, that in theory, I would think would just be a one-time interaction with the city, and it probably isn't that just that one instance that people are running up against. It sounds like outside of that interaction with the TNR, they're looking for the relocation. That just seemed to be my observation. So two separate but related issues.
Well, I think part of the problem is ours isn't relocation, it's return.
Right.
So
Sorry,
so
that's what I meant,
like,
not what I said, but what I meant.
Oh, okay. I feel like legislatively we could put something in code that said at a certain number that they're relocated instead of returned. Mr. Wall?
If I made the way it's written now, I believe we have the flexibility to do that. And so instead of having a code to do that, we can let Dan or whomever is in that position review the situation, see if it needs that. He has and is doing that. It's hard to legislate that for the different neighborhoods for all the meet the different circumstances. So I like the idea that we have the flexibility in there that's there now that we can choose when that would be appropriate.
Well, and if we were to add a requirement that beyond a certain threshold, they'd be relocated, that would add to the administrative burden and the overhead cost to administer the program. Sorry, I jumped in front of Councilmember Lamb.
So my thoughts are, I'm not really looking to legislate this, but maybe we could put something in as part of it that just says if or shall, or those words we like to use within our code. If there's an issue like we have right now in an area, the city, whether that's the mayor's office or whether that's animal control, can assess the situation and remove the cats without returning them. Because that's what this really is. We're not getting this from the 25 different areas that have feral cats, because I'm sure there's more than one area that has feral cat issues, but it's this one that has basically reached out to the city council. Councilmember Whitelock's talked to them. They're, I don't want to use the word desperate, but they're not happy. So a way that we can make them happy, that whether that's from, and Dirk, you know this, it's one of those things where we can help them out. There's a way to help them out, but does it need to be a legislative thing that the council does, or is this more of a directive from the mayor's office?
I agree with you, Councilman Lamb, and it is a directive from the mayor's office right now, and they have received that direction. So the past month or two, we have been relocating them.
Okay. So I mean, I think you guys are doing what's been asked, and I guess there just needs to be a way to get that back to the people, because right now I don't know if they're still complaining or if it's still an issue or not. All I know is that it's here at City Council today, and they're asking for a solution. And legislatively, I don't think we can offer a solution at this time.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I think if we're going to go the administrative route, then something from administration needs to be written up and given to animal control, because one of the complaints I fielded was, well, the mayor said that they were going to do this, but when we went to animal control, they didn't have a clue. And so if we, that's why I'm here tonight, basically, is because the other thing was, the mayor actually did suggest to them that they work with me to get it changed in code if we need to. So I'm okay if there's something written, but it's got to be written somewhere, because mayors come and go, issues often just get worse.
All right, so it sounds like we haven't heard from everybody on the council, but it sounds like the general consensus seems to be to allow the mayor's office to run with this, provide some sort of written directive to animal control that can be circulated with us as council members as well as the community who may have interest. And then if there is a legislative tweak that may be necessary or may be helpful, that can be brought to the council for consideration. Is that the general feeling where the council would like to go?
Sounds good to me.
All right. I don't know that we need to leave this on unfinished business since it falls to the mayor, but maybe, Mayor, we could ask for an update on this in a report in a future council meeting, maybe the next meeting or two.
That would be fine. I will ask Dan to prepare one and bring that back in whatever date you suggest.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there is nothing else on this item, we can move forward. I'm not seeing any hands pop up. So the next item we have is the Wood Ranch conversation. We do anticipate that this one's going to take at least 30 minutes or so. I know at the bottom it says we're going to try and discuss ranked choice voting again. Given where we're at time-wise, I believe we're going to have to move this to another agenda, to another work session. So we will proceed with Wood Ranch. Mr. Lee and Scott Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, we just want to give you an update on the Wood Ranch proposal that we've been working on actively with Daybreak. I've asked Mr. Langford to give an update on the progress we've made heretofore, what's been being worked on from a city staff perspective. And we've asked Daybreak to chime in and share with you as a council what they have been working on to adjust their project to meet some of the previous comments and questions and concerns that have been raised by the council. And then we'll go back to Scott at the end to talk about kind of where this particular project is headed from this point. So if I can, I'd like to turn the time over to Scott and then Daybreak.
Which folks from Daybreak need to be set up? I know we've got Rulon, but who else needs to be able to speak?
I believe Rulon is going to speak to the presentation tonight. You probably want to invite Ty McCutcheon if he's on, and possibly Rich Sontag if he's on as well.
Okay, we've got both of them for now. Scott.
Okay, thank you. If you could advance to the next slide. So oftentimes council, when we take your precious time at your work sessions and your council, your agenda, it's good to state am I frozen? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I thought my computer froze up. Council Chair McConaughey, do you have the PowerPoint presentation?
I'm not sure what happened there, but that was entertaining. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, I saw Scott's microphone moving, but video had frozen and I couldn't hear anything.
Well, that's why I paused as well. I thought I dropped off, but.
Nope, it looked like it booted me momentarily. Sorry about that. All right.
So as Mr. Lee explained, the main purpose of tonight's time with you, Council, is to give you an update. If you can advance to the next slide. Oftentimes the question comes up, why is this taking so long? You know, we've worked on other large master plans, and yes, they take a long time, but Wood Ranch is certainly unique in the fact that there are many, many different pieces to it. And so that's kind of where I want to start with the council. And I'll take just a few moments, and then I'll turn the time over to Rulon and Ty from Daybreak to give you a more detailed update. But if you could advance to the next slide. So in the background, you can see some of these undulating hills that you can find on the Wood property, and that's sort of the backdrop of this slide. There are many steps to metaphorically get ourselves up to the top of this hill to complete this project. We've got an annexation. We're working with Salt Lake County. We've got the PCFB. Thank you. Yeah, you can just kind of click through the annexation. We've got the Kearns Improvement District, the Public Infrastructure District, or the PID, mining overlay, geotech issues, and to cap it all off, a master development agreement that sort of unifies and ties everything together. This is a visual marching up the hill. I don't think it's the most appropriate visual because it's not a sequential path that we have to take. And if you can click a couple more times on this slide, I apologize for the animation. I think a more appropriate analogy is one of an arch. It's a challenging feature to develop. If you can click maybe 2 more times, thank you. There's a lot of interplay that goes on at the same time to make an arch structurally sound. And you've got some support braces that need to occur. And I think this is probably the most appropriate analogy I can draw for the Wood Ranch project. It's something that we're trying to build that will be beautiful, will be lasting, and have some strong integrity. And so all of these things have some interplay, and we're marching along fairly well. And so if you can click on the next slide, let me give you a quick progress update. And again, Daybreak will be following me after this slide, and they'll give you some more detail, and council can certainly ask questions if you have any. But the annexation, that's moving ahead. There's the annexation petition has been drafted. We as staff are reviewing it, and we're comfortable where that sits. The anticipation is to put a pre-annexation agreement embedded in the master development agreement. And so that's moving along quite well. The planned community form-based zoning ordinance has to be created, and that's one of the fundamental aspects of this development. And so we've got a substantial working draft that we are now batting back and forth with Daybreak. And we hope to have a good draft presented to the council subcommittee on land use in the near future to get your input on that. The Kearns Improvement District, you I believe received an email from Mr. Anderson earlier today. They gave you a sneak peek of this new or amended interlocal agreement we have with the Improvement District. And indeed, the Board of Trustees approved that amended interlocal agreement between West Jordan and the district not too long ago, there on November 3rd. And we hope to get the interlocal agreement to the council's next meeting on December 2nd for your consideration. Just a side tangent with the Kearns Improvement District. So there's a 2-step process with this. The interlocal agreement is the first step. The next step is the actual expansion of the improvement district via an annexation. And that will be step number 2, which will come to the council likely during a future meeting. The Public Improvement District, or the PID, A letter of intent has been drafted, and we continue to work on that with Daybreak and city staff. The mining extraction overlay is an essential component to the portion of the wood property that is not in the city and is currently being mined by HADCO. And the anticipation of bringing that mining operation into the city necessitates a new overlay zone to allow the extraction to continue as part of the Wood Ranch development. So a working draft is in play right there. Most of you were able to go out to the site earlier this past summer, and because of the unique geography and topography of that property, you are well aware that geotech issues are an important aspect of this project. And we, as you can see on the list here, we've got a phase 1 environmental completed. There's active geotech studies going on the property right now. And we've secured a contract with the third-party geotech firm out of California. And Daybreak has agreed to a geotech assurance fund. So all of that will be baked into the different elements of the PCFB and the MDA. And then last, but certainly not least, we have the MDA. The drafting is moving forward with that. But as you can tell, a lot of these preceding items on this list affect the drafting of the MDA. And so working all together, we're marching towards completing this archway. And we've heard the council's concerns in previous work sessions, and we feel like that we're working well with Daybreak to create a pretty good project for the city. And with that, I'll turn the time over to Rulon Dudson from Daybreak, and he can go into more detail as to how we are addressing some of the council's concerns that you brought up in the past.
All right, Rulon, there you go.
Yes, thank you. Council, good evening. Mayor, good evening to you as well. As Director Langford mentioned, we are working with the city to advance some of these issues. We appreciate the time that the council spends in work sessions such as this, and appreciate the opportunity to elaborate on some of the issues that we've heard throughout the process, and we want you to know that we're taking them very seriously. Tonight, we're briefly going to review 10 topics that we have heard either through council members directly or through staff as being priorities for the Wood Ranch development to consider. And you can see those listed here. I won't go through those specifically as we'll march through each slide in succession. So the first one, and these are not based on any sort of prioritization, but they all are important in terms of our work on the Wood Ranch. So the first was some concern expressed by the council in one of our early meetings relating to the master development agreement and how that could be assigned to other parties if ownership of Daybreak were to change for some reason, or we were to secure a different investor partner. And so we've been working with CAO Lee and also Director Langford to propose language that would be included in the MDA to make sure that if in fact a change is proposed consistent with council direction, that it would require city approval. And this is being added to the master development as noted here. The next issue that we felt was raised, and Chairman McConaughey, I'm counting on you to look if there are any hands raised as we move on. Okay.
If anybody does have any question or would like some elaboration, feel free to jump in.
Yes.
But for now, we don't have any hands raised. So
perfect. That's totally fine. I want to make sure that we're able to address these appropriately. The next item that we're taking a look at is development quality. There was a great deal of interest as we had our various site tours to Daybreak. The comment we heard most often was, we're excited for a wood ranch development that has some of the similar characteristics as Daybreak. And so making sure that the master development agreement and the master development plan actually reflected a significant level of development quality is something that we've always anticipated from step one in the process. That was something that we've discussed with the council and staff in detail. It's being supported, as noted here, through the PCFB zoning ordinance. It starts right with the purpose and intent, and follows right through the various steps of the approval process. Some of the specific items are mentioned here in terms of the master development plan, the master development agreement, the community structure plan that identifies very, very specific place types. A document that is currently under review is the land use and design guidelines. We previously referred to that as the matrix. It's a very specific document that relates to setbacks, to the character of the neighborhoods and how they would be developed, again, based on place type. And then the third element that's identified there is a builder pattern book. This speaks specifically to architectural character of the development. We're hoping those things raise the council's comfort threshold as it relates to development quality. It's similar to the tools that we are using with the city of South Jordan as we're developing Daybreak. And what you see in Daybreak is really the end result of these tools. I want to advance to the next slide.
If my computer will stop arguing with me, there we go.
There's a real interest, thank you. There's a real interest expressed from the council and from staff regarding the commercial development. As noted in the draft PCFB zone ordinance as it currently stands, it accommodates 3 types of mixed use commercial opportunities, that being the neighborhood commercial, the village commercial, and the town center place types. Currently, the Wood Ranch Community Structure Plan identifies neighborhood commercial and village commercial opportunity areas. Currently, the Wood Ranch MDA and the MDP reflects the Wood Ranch base camp. If you'll recall in some of the early diagrams, this is considered to be the community hub. It's where we will locate what we would define as our community center. It would be similar to the hub that we have now on the west side of Mountain View Corridor. If you've been in that area, we went through that on our tour. So similar in scale, similar in commercial opportunity, and similar in neighborhood compatibility in terms of scale and the use there. The next item is street standards. We've had some good discussions in the working group as to the most appropriate place where street standards should be identified as it relates to the PCFB zone, and then ultimately the Wood Ranch development if and as that moves forward. So those standards are now incorporated as the PCFB draft zone currently stands within that ordinance. It's also something that is being reinforced within the master development plan and the design guidelines as it relates to street widths and the character of those various avenues. And then finally, the master development plan and the master development agreement includes an exhibit depicting the major circulation systems, where those roads would go, identifying collectors, identifying connectors, as well as the local roads and streets. And all of those are, again, consistent with the city standards as discussed. One topic that received quite a bit of attention in a March meeting was our discussion of lanes and recognizing the value that they contribute to neighborhood function and form. It was discussed and the city council agreed that they could be city-owned as long as they were HOA maintained. And by that, we mean the snow removal, the lane repair and replacement. It was also discussed that if we were to utilize some PID funds, they could be used for lanes, and also that if the HOA was assuming responsibility for lanes, but the city was receiving B&C road funds, that those would be transferred to the HOA for the maintenance of those thoroughfares. And again, as mentioned on all of these items, currently the Wood Ranch MDA is being drafted to reflect this position and direction. We've had, and we've reflected on it often, our July 8th site visits with the council over the course of several days during that period. But the expressed support for sensitivity to the ridgeline setbacks, that although the current ordinance may, in some cases, as it relates to Wood Ranch, actually allow development on the ridge lines, that there was some discussion that those ridge lines would be protected, would be maintained in some sort of fashion, and the aesthetics could accomplish that. Part of that was discussing, if you'll recall from the exhibits that were previously shared, the orientation of front doors and the hillside as it relates to the various product that would be introduced in those areas. We view trails as being really the front door of a lot of the community amenities that we provide. And so there's some flexibility taken as to the orientation of the homes and their accessibility to that, to those uses. Part of the PCFB zone, again, is currently drafted, requires a minimum of 25% open space. Our current Wood Ranch land use plan reflects right now closer to 40. So we feel like that's definitely an enhanced community benefit and speaks well to the unique siting of the Wood Ranch properties. One of the things that was extremely beneficial as it relates to this topic was within our working group, there was a mutually identified limits of development. It means as our design group is working with city staff to identify what we're referring to as the no build line. And it's the line where development will occur below. There will be no development occur above that. And this again speaks to the ridge top sensitivity and some of the unique attributes of the Wood Ranch site. But again, taking into consideration the broader community plan, as definitely there are some cuts and fills proposed for the area. And we'll discuss those in a bit. But again, the Wood Ranch Master Development agreements and exhibits, the documents are being prepared and are drafted to reflect same. Part of our commitment to, before we jump to the next one, is our open space. We've made a commitment, and this will be as part of our working group discussions with CAO Lee and Director Langford, is that we will provide 33% of the open space for the entire project at the 1,000th unit, another 33% when we hit 2,000 units, and the remaining 33% to take us to 100% of what we've committed to do at the 3,000th unit. We feel that that provides, we would hope, some degree of comfort as requested by the council, that we're not doing all of the development first and then waiting to preserve or develop some of the open space related amenities, the very last thing. So we are excited to see how that language is reflected within the draft MDA. The topic that, other than feral cats, as we picked up on tonight, the topic that received most interest in this project has been our geotech and soils. As Director Langford mentioned earlier, there were some concerns expressed on the site tour, and there was the consensus that that risk can be minimized and even eliminated through the appropriate geotech studies. There was a request for independent professional oversight, inspections, and disclosures. And what you'll see here in the next several bullets is our effort as the developer to raise, again, the city council members' comfort that we've, first of all, heard that concern, and that we are taking very deliberate steps to address some of those issues. As previously mentioned, there's been a phase 1 completed for the property. That's a very, very high level. No one would ever suggest that's going to be adequate for the things that are proposed under our development. But there is a draft geotech study and report that's being prepared, and it's currently under review not only with the city, but with the third-party geosyntech professional that has been retained by the city, and that Daybreak is funding to help us through this effort. But they again are recognized professionals. They provide this oversight resource that will assist in providing, we think, a good balance of acceptable engineering practices and balancing that with the interests and what would be appropriate for a development as we are proposing. Part of their work is some standards and protocols in terms of how cuts and fills and soils would be addressed as they are encountered. We recognize that there are current city ordinances that would be applicable as situations require. These would obviously come into play as they would in any other development within West Jordan, unless the master development agreement speaks to it otherwise. Something that we feel provides a great deal of comfort in terms of the geotech report, but more importantly, the information that's garnered from that, and that is our builder pool. We are very, very selective as to the builders that we would engage in Daybreak, but also Wood Ranch. We expect them all to adequately have builder insurance. We rate their performance with a quarterly scorecard, and we have the leverage that that others have elected not to use, that their past performance is actually what determines their future contracts and whether additional lots are available. This, we feel, provides an appropriate balance of carrot and stick, and we utilize each of those as the individual builder and their situation warrants. We're also very, very deliberate in our developer to builder and our builder to buyer disclosures. If you've had a chance, those of you who may or may not have been involved in some Daybreak transactions, that is a pretty significant document, because we want to make sure that anyone who purchases property, not only in Daybreak, but as we move forward with Wood Ranch, is very aware of the studies that have been done in the past, the studies that the environment in which the development is occurring, some of the adjacent land uses, some of the expected form and function of the community as it continues to develop. And those disclosures are an important part of our builder and buyer awareness. The council also suggested, and this was referred to earlier, and so I apologize if some of this stuff is redundant, but this provides a little more detail. This is a geotech assurance fund that the developer, and this will be reflected within the master development agreement, has committed that through 0.25% of the transfer fee, so for every parcel and then subsequent sale of a home within the Woods Ranch area, there'll be 0.25% that is put in that transfer fee will be put in a $500,000 reserve fund. This fund will be set aside to address specific geotech issues, if in fact they are found. So this is limited to second and future homeowners up to 7 years, because the initial homeowner would be protected through their original contract with their builder. So 7 years after the original certificate of occupancy, and that there would be a $20,000 limit per claim. These numbers are not just what we pulled out of the hat. These are things that we've discussed with staff and council and industry experts, and feel like this is appropriate to protect those interests. So as it relates to cuts and fills, again, as previously mentioned in our exercise in July, there are some concerns expressed with the initial proposed height and depths with some of the fills. The council at that time expressed that they would be more comfortable with those cuts and fills if they were done correctly, which is what we would consider under any circumstance, and be subject to current city ordinances and supplemental standards and processes as necessary in this third-party oversight that we previously mentioned. They understand that based on the anticipated uses for that site and some of the desires of the current owner to provide other opportunities, for example, institutional uses and some of those other things that it would be necessary for some cuts and fills to occur to make the site more development conducive, and recognizing that it wasn't all or nothing, but there were some appropriate trade-offs as we identify things, for example, as the no-build line, as we roll through with amenities such as the trail and the open space areas, considerations in terms of stormwater, drainage, and other infrastructure, that cuts and fills would be necessary under any type of development within this area. So what we have done is we've gone back and have reconfigured our initially proposed grading strategy. Right now, as it currently stands, the maximum fill is less than 25 feet, which is consistent with existing city ordinance. Some of the cuts are still significant based on the desired land uses, as I've mentioned before, and what it will take to both deliver some of the site with the necessary infrastructures with the necessary infrastructure in terms of water and sewer. However, that reintroduced and proposed grading, the cut and fill plan, again, is being reviewed by city staff with our folks. One thing that we felt was critical that came from our July discussions is that the city council's understanding and support for an initial mass grading of the site that would bring it within some accepted tolerances of what would be proposed as the finished grade, rather than a site by site, lot by lot, or village by village grading approach. And that's what you'll see in terms of the various phases of the development. We've already mentioned third-party professional resources, the additional standards and protocols that would be applicable to the site, as well as the application of existing city ordinances, and the Wood Ranch, again, master development plan and the MDA documents are being finalized, and they are being drafted to reflect these considerations. One of the other elements that we were exploring as part of this proposal was the PID financing. Based on the March 5th work session with staff, the city council expressed some support if this funding strategy was used for unique amenities and enhancements, but definitely above and beyond what the underlying zone would require. We agree with that. What's been discussed a number of times, and this is what will be rolled out in the formal PID discussions under council consideration, is that the debt term would be a 4 mil maximum, a 30-year maximum term. That was to be pinned to the reasonable life of the asset. And what we are targeting in terms of the enhancements, when you consider the open space, when you consider the associated trails and other amenities, is a $25 million target in terms of the bonds. This, as we've discussed, our investment in what we would consider the enhancements of the community, they will far exceed this by almost another 30 or 40%. And so we feel that $25 million is a good target and is an adequate return for the investment for the city's engagement. Gilmore Bell advisors have been engaged. As previously mentioned, we provided a draft LOI to the city for review. Our next conversation is pretty significant, and as that is identifying exactly what the base line would be for the PCFB zone, and then discussing whether the enhancements that we have proposed are adequate to reach that targeted 25 million, and exactly what those enhanced projects and amenities would entail. So this responds to housing ratios and densities. Based on the previous conversations with the council, there's been some discussed that the maximum density would be 5 units an acre. Again, this is across the entire 336 acre project. That would lend itself close to 3,182 unit maximum. The We talked about with the council, the ratio of multifamily and attached to the single family. That was determined to be no more than a 50-50 ratio. There's also some discussion, and we think this is a critical point as well, that stacked flats be limited to 600 units. Our commitment to the city is that we're not going to be cute with that. There are a number of industry definitions of stacked flats and actually what that means. We're interpreting that as being apartments. And so if they're stacked, whether they're apartments, whether they're condos, whether they're other things, it is limited to that 600 units, and we are committed to that. The City Council also discussed a specific density cap for each place type in the PCFB zone. Its draft as it currently stands establishes that. We appreciated the council's flexibility as it relates to that next bullet of having a residential density that can float within the various place types. Again, this is in consideration of topography, of some of the community open spaces, those that are public and private. And it makes a more unique community, as you've experienced, if you've been through a Daybreak and some of the examples of the various mixed uses that occur within a pretty tight geographic area. So currently, even though the 5 unit per acre maximum would be, the 3,100 units, close to 3,200 units, our current land proposal is a request for just over 3,000 units. This includes the wood property. And this brings the overall ratio to 4.8 units per acre gross. And again, the master development plan reflects this, and the MDA is being drafted to reflect this, these commitments as well. So either we've bored everyone to tears, or you have so many questions that you dare not drop that discussion now.
So before we talk through next steps, are there any questions from the council as to what's been reviewed? I'm not seeing any hands. So next step, Councilmember Green.
I do have a question. I know that we have talked, and maybe this is more directed at Mr. Lee and Mr. Langford. Given the direction and the stuff we've seen tonight, does this, and I know that the perception has been that that Daybreak wanted a lot of flexibility, probably more flexibility than we wanted, than we were comfortable with. From an administration standpoint, does this give us the left and right boundaries that we're comfortable with, that gives them some flexibility, but that we're comfortable with where we want to be with this project? Does that make sense?
So is that a Scott question or a Corbin question? I see both of them kind of smiling and
Scott,
deferring
you
a
answer that
response.
first, and I'll chime in.
Sure. Councilman Green, great question. This is a unique development in the fact of the requested flexibility, but my personal opinion is that with the overall cap of just over 3,000, so 3,069 units, as you just saw on the previous slide, we have that overall ceiling. And then in addition to that ceiling, there's going to be individual villages or sub areas in this master plan. And each of those smaller pieces of the puzzle will have a designated density and use types allowed. And so there's some wiggle room and flexibility in each of these little villages as they come online. And then we have the overall cap, which helps with other impacts, to infrastructure like water, sewer, transportation, things like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, or if Corbin, you want to add to that.
I would just say, we're working on it. That's why you don't have an MDA in front of you yet. We're trying to make sure that the city is assured that to get the type of project we think you're envisioning, and we think that Daybreak's envisioning. But we're trying to make sure that Daybreak also has the tools they need to carry out that project. That's really tough. It's really tough to guarantee to the city they'll get it, and yet guarantee to Daybreak that they'll get the flexibility they need to pull it off. Whether that's regarding geotech, regarding density, regarding phasing plans, regarding amenities. We're working through each one of those issues and trying to figure out that balance between kind of assurances to the taxpayers, assurances to the council, and yet the needed flexibility for Daybreak. It's coming. It's coming, but we're still working on it. Part of the challenge is how interwoven all of these different issues are. Right? It's very difficult to pin down specifics or specific boundaries on something like phasing plans, as we're still working through some geotech. So in some ways we're waiting on some things to make decisions on the others, but it's taking a lot of time, but we're making steady progress, I believe.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So do we have any kind of a time frame, like when we think this might all come together? Will we be seeing it in steps? I'm assuming we'll get the PCFB first, and then how are we staging this to come to the council, I guess is my question. And about what time frame are you thinking?
That's a good lead into Scott's next slide.
And if you would, as you go through the slide, we've got about 4 minutes.
Yeah. And the council, you have this slide, and it's my best attempt to put a very complicated process in a sequential order as best I can. The things could change a little bit here and there, but Councilmember Whitelock, you're right. There are certain stones, if I'm going back to the analogy of this arch, there's certain stones that need to go into place first. We need to establish a PCFB zone, meaning the text, right? That the zone doesn't exist. The mining extraction overlay, it doesn't exist. We've got to create those stones. The first thing for sure, unless things change between here and your next meeting, you'll see the Kearns Improvement District interlocal agreement. That's an important element that needs to be reviewed by the council. But I'd be happy to go through this more in detail with the land use committee if you feel it would be beneficial. But you can see, council, that the planning commission has to weigh in on certain things and make recommendations to you. And then council needs to consider and make formal action on everything from the KID interlocal and annexations, the PCFB. The sequence of this on your list is very important. For example, we cannot move forward and actually rezone the property to PCFB unless you weigh in and approve a master development agreement first. Our attorneys have done their research, and that this is a very important order. When it actually gets to the council's calendar, that is still a work in progress, but it is a work in progress. We're working diligently on it. Essentially, every single day is Wood Ranch Day, depending on where you are and what responsibilities you have at the city, from Public Works to the city attorney's office to my department. And so I'd be happy to go through this with each of you independently or at the subcommittee if you have more questions, but I want to respect your time tonight.
So I thank you. I thank you, and I thank the Daybreak folks, because a lot of what we've asked for has been added, and that's great. I'm very happy to see the amount put in for a geotech cushion to ease my concerns. Do we have a draft of the MDA? Is that, I mean, we've already seen one at one time, so.
We do. We're working on a draft of the MDA right now, council member, and we've got a couple more internal meetings to really get the framework and structure ready to start passing that back and forth with Daybreak. But that is, as you, and not to beat the analogy too much, but you can see on an arch how things come up and they're getting closer and closer. We're getting to that crest right now. And so that's where that keystone of the MDA comes into place to lock it all in. And we're getting close. We're working on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Langsford.
All right. If there are no other questions, then as mentioned, if there's no objection from the council, we're going to put ranked choice voting on hold. Depending on how things go tonight, we can either come back to this later tonight or move it to another meeting. And then same thing with new business. We'll try and come back to this one a little bit later on tonight, should there be time. But for now, we will take a very short recess and we will reconvene at 7 p.m. with the formal portion of our meeting. So with that, if you're interested in participating in citizen comments, now would be the time to call in and get everything situated there. And we will be back here in about 3 minutes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7 p.m., so I will reconvene our City Council meeting for this evening. It is Wednesday, November 18th, 2020. We're joined by all members of the City Council, and also accompanying us tonight, we have Mayor Dirk Burton, CAO Corbin Lee, and a number of other members of staff and folks who will be participating in tonight's meeting. As we get started with this formal portion of our meeting tonight, I do need to start with this notice of declaration regarding our determination regarding virtual meetings. Due to the increased threat of serious illness and loss of life by the rapid spread of the COVID-19 virus, the chair of the West Jordan City Council has determined that conducting this City Council meeting at City Hall or at another location is likely to contribute to the spread of the COVID-19 and would present a substantial risk to the health, safety, and welfare of the city's residents, participants, and observers. Therefore, pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-2074, the West Jordan City Council hereby declares that the meetings of this public body will be held only electronically until further notice. This determination will expire in 30 days from the date the chair of the West Jordan City Council signs this written determination, which was done on November 12th. Tonight's, I apologize if I get a little bit emotional, but tonight is a special night. It was 18 years ago today that Officer Ron Wood lost his life in the line of duty protecting the residents of our city. This happened in a neighborhood not far from my home, right near the school where I attended elementary school. At this point, I would invite everybody present to join us in a brief moment of silence to commemorate his service, his sacrifice, and that of his family to protect and the safety of those of us who live here in the city. Please join with me now. It's a difficult thing to commemorate the passing of an individual who has laid down their life in the service of their friends and their neighbors and the community that they've sworn to serve and protect. There are no words sufficient to express the gratitude that we as a city have for him. And as elected officials, we would be remiss if on the commemoration of his passing, we did not take a moment to share that appreciation on behalf of all those who have elected us to represent them and be their voice. In addition to the residents of West Jordan noting and being appreciative of the service of Officer Wood, it's worth noting that our police officers still remember the sacrifice that was made. Though many did not serve with him, he still remembered. His impact is still here. And today they took time to have their own moment of silence in the neighborhood where he so vigilantly sought to protect us. At this time, I'd like to ask Lieutenant Bell if he would lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance. Lieutenant Bell.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Lieutenant Bell. Mayor Burton, would you like to take a moment briefly?
Yes, thank you, Councilman McConaughey. Today marks an ominous day in our city's history. Officer Ron Wood was shot and killed by a gunman wanted for robbery. He was a West Jordan resident and served on the police force for 8 years. He was active in our community. He could participate in the neighborhood watch program, outreach programs, shop with a cop, things like that. He was part of our community. Thank you for giving us this opportunity, Council, to remember Officer Wood this evening. We have named a park after him, and thanks to Councilman Jacob, we've also named our Justice Court building after him. So I want to extend our thanks to our entire police department, who takes care of our city and watches us over us. They take a risk every day to serve and protect us, not knowing what they'll run into that day they go to work for us. So thank you, police department, for getting up every day, putting on uniform and going to work in our behalf. We appreciate you and we salute you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. While it's a difficult thing to begin a meeting with a moment of silence, it's nice to take a moment to reflect on the dedication some have and put in perspective the different issues that we're facing, and really make sure that we assign the appropriate scale with the different items we're talking about. There are some who have made significant sacrifices for the freedoms and the safeties that we enjoy, and we will continue to honor their memory and their service and their sacrifice. With that, we'd like to move on into citizen comments this evening. We do have some public hearings tonight. If you're going to speak during the public hearing, we ask that during that time you limit your comments to the item that's being raised as a public hearing. Otherwise, if there's anything else you would like to speak about, you can do so during citizen comments. It does not have to be on the agenda. You could talk to us about anything that you'd like. You can have up to 3 minutes, and let me move our timer up there so that that can be ready. And typically during this time, we don't engage in back and forth. We're here to listen and allow you to be heard. If there are specific questions that you have answers to that need to be taken offline, you'll see when you log in online, there's an opportunity to, it says chat, but that's not being used for back and forth. Rather, that's just being used so that you can share your contact information and the appropriate member of staff can get back with you. We do ask that you help maintain the decorum of the meeting, which among other things means that we would ask that you share your name, not a screen name, but your actual name as you speak, as anonymous comments will not be accepted. As you're joining us online, you'll see a screen that looks somewhat like this. There's that chat icon at the bottom where if you need follow-up for your question, you can provide it there, and you'll also see the icon to raise your hand. When you click on that, it will turn green, and that lets me know that you'd like to speak. When that comes up and it's your turn, you're going to see something that looks like this. That says the host would like you to unmute your microphone. You can hit the button to unmute, and then your time will begin. So we'd like to go to citizen comment now. If you're interested in speaking, please hit that button to raise your hand if you're joining us online. I do notice that we have just one person who has dialed in and is there by phone. If you're dialing in by phone, you can hit, actually, I believe this is Alexandra. So let me see if it will allow me to ask her to speak. Alexandra, if you would like to speak this evening, go ahead and hit *6 to unmute your line, and then you'll be able to speak. Again, *6. Give it just a moment there. For those who aren't familiar, Alexandra Efremo joins us frequently in council meetings and often likes to contribute during citizen comments. So looks like she may have unmuted now. Alexandra, are you there?
Yes.
All right. Would you like to speak for citizen comments tonight?
Yes. Good evening. I just want to say, this is Alexandra Efremo. I just want to say we really need to count all our blessings that Officer Wood and the police force, that they're in our lives. So we just have to count our blessings. But I do want to, I've done this before and it's been a long time, but I have a little thing I want to say. Ladies and gentlemen, may we pause for a moment to reflect upon our common goals before we begin the business of this meeting. We are privileged to gather here together in a system that gives us freedom to participate in our own governance, whether from within or through the strength provided by our personal faith. We seek wisdom, understanding, fairness, and resolve in the fulfillment of our duties and in the pursuance of our goals. May our differences be respected and our common aspiration of promoting the common good be our guide in carrying out the tasks we are about to undertake. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Alexandra.
Okay.
All right. Now, if there's anybody else who would like to speak during citizen comment, please hit the hand button at the bottom of the screen to indicate. Give it just a moment here. We've got, looks like 22 people who are attending live with us in the Zoom, but I'm not seeing any hands go up. So I will close citizen comments and we will proceed to reports to City Council.
There's a hand up now. Sorry, it was just a little slow.
Last second. All right, Max, let me open that up so you can be allowed to talk. You've got 3 minutes.
Okay, this is Ann Jensen. We have spent several years trying to cope with the feral cats. They dig in our flower beds, leaving feces there and all over the lawn. It's quite a chore to clean up the yards before mowing, and many times we still don't avoid running over piles of cat feces. It's very unpleasant to be on my hands and knees cultivating flower beds and to dig up clumps of cat feces. We have trimmed, removed lower branches on juniper trees, and removed a sand pile from our yard to discourage the presence of the feral cats, but the population seems to grow and we're plagued with them all the time. I've planted pansies in the fall and had to replace some in the spring because the cats have dug around them and exposed the roots, killing them. I've purchased cat deterrent and been given some also, and it calls for repeat applications in 30 days, but I've not seen it ever work for more than a week. That is in the flower beds, but what am I supposed to do about a ½ acre of lawn when we find feces in the front and back lawns in multiple places? Grandchildren come and want to play football or soccer, and we have to patrol the lawn before we dare let them outside. We do not have a cat as a pet, but the TNR policy has thrust upon our neighborhood many cats not of our choosing. Thus, their lifespan makes us live with them and some of the problems they bring for 12 to 15 years, even if they were all neutered and spayed. If people want cats, as was expressed in the meeting, why can't they buy a cat, a pet cat, or adopt one and care for it versus having the wild cats around? Many animals in the wild are hunted and regulated in order to control population explosions of their species. Why can't these cats that are wild and belong to no one be regulated through methods used in past years so as to spare us the problems confronting us? We realize that those of you serving on the council now were not part of the policy changes to TNR. We also know that TNR is just a city policy, not a Salt Lake County policy, so to reverse the policy will not violate the county ordinances. We and many neighbors favor the policy that West Jordan had before TNR was implemented and asked for the previous policy to be reconsidered, or at the very least, continue the relocating of cats away from our area. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the comments. Okay, we'll just double check and see if there's anybody else who wishes to speak before we move on from city comments. We'll give it about another 10 seconds or so. Lee, all right, you should be able to unmute yourself. Lee?
Yes, I'm Lee Henderson. I live in the Mountain View subdivision close to the Jensens. We too have been plagued with feral cats for many years. In the years that we were allowed to trap and euthanize those cats through the city, we captured on average about 10 within the summer months. Why are neighbors allowed to feed feral cats? Truly wild animals can take care of themselves. In the previous meeting, it was mentioned about skunks and raccoons along the Jordan River. I'm sure that the residents along that river do not feed the skunks and the raccoons. Why are feral cats allowed to be fed and then deemed community cats? As Ann stated, we have multiple areas in our yard where we can no longer plant any flowers because of the cats using our flower beds as a litter box. It's a very ongoing problem that we've had to deal with for many years. We appreciate any help that the city can give us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for those comments, Lee. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council this evening? All right. Seeing none, now we'll move on from citizen comments and touch on reports to city council. So we will start with the council office report. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Council Chair. Just the report from the council office to the council includes the office has been working diligently in answering resident requests that come into the council office via the comment line and the 24-hour telephone line, and that fall within the council's purview. Any administrative requests are forwarded directly to the mayor and the CAO. Secondly, the office has been performing research that council members have requested and doing some search including amendments to code for efficiency of operations. And I know when I first mentioned the council chamber upgrades that they would be done in October, and they had some technical glitches. Some things were shipped late just because of high demand of things like cameras. And those upgrades continue to progress for an eventual return of the council to the council chambers. And the upgrades are using the Zoom technology, and it is expected to have an easier and better outreach to the citizens of West Jordan. Also, just wanted to let the council know that the council office is meeting regularly with the chief administrative officer, the mayor, and the community engagement and finance director just to answer the requests that the council has, as well as provide input from the council to the administration. So that's our report for this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Council, are there any reports back from city council assignments that need to be shared with the body of the council? Councilmember Worthen, please.
So I just want to give you a reports on events. We do have some things coming up on December 3rd. We will have a story, it's not a story walk, but it's kind of a story drive through, and Santa will be at the end for the kids to see. We also have started back with planning for the Western Stampede in the summer in July. So hopefully, fingers crossed, things will go well with the vaccine and we'll be able to hold those events. But the committee decided it would make more sense to go ahead and plan for the positive, and we'll kind of hope for the best on that. So things are moving forward. And I will also have some more events that'll be coming up to discuss in our next few meetings. So just wanted to let you know about that.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Worthen. And then also saw your note about scheduling for a budget committee meeting or a budget planning meeting as well.
Yes, we'll have the budget planning meeting on December 3rd. So we'll be able to get our some information discussed and what our thoughts are over to the mayor on the December 3rd.
Beautiful, thank you. Any other reports back to the city council? All right, Mayor, your report.
Thank you. First, I'd like to make a correction. The name of our Justice Building is the Thomas Reese Justice Building. However, there is a conference room inside, which is named after Ron Wood, the Ron Wood Conference Room. So a little clarification there. Let's talk about what's happening in the world and in West Jordan. That would be COVID-19. That's happening all over the place. I think maybe you could report on this actually very well, Councilman McConaughey, but I want to tell you that on the CARES funding, we have gotten some money through the CARES funding, and we were hoping that the final deadline would be extended, but the federal government doesn't seem to be looking that way. So it appears that that may not happen. So we may not be getting additional funding before early 2021. However, we will continue to work in the areas we've been and see if we can pull something out that we've been working with the county. So we'll keep you posted. If we get that, we'll move forward and be able to meet some more of our expenses that have arisen due to COVID. In the meantime, we're still working with what they've given us, and we've made some good progress, and Alan shared some of those that we've made with that as well. And one of those, as you may recall, is the opportunity we had to promote our restaurants locally. And this is going over very well. We've had some fantastic responses from it, and it's making waves throughout the county. And we've had responses back from some county on there too, and asked about how we're doing it and shared with them. So thank you for letting us create that and have that go forward. And speaking about the county, Mayor Wilson has decided to close all the arts and performance facilities, as well as limit access to the library and rec centers due to high COVID numbers. And the senior centers are closed and have been and will continue to be closed until at which time she determines it's safe enough to open those back up. And as far as city art itself, did you know that we have 1 out of every 60 residents has an active case of COVID-19? And that is way up from what we had last month. And our schools are kind of tough. Jordan School District has closed the high schools in the city and the middle schools. Fortunately, the elementary schools are, I believe, still operating. And we're sharing public, we'll continue to give it the information out on Facebook, I should say social media, and on our website to help keep healthy practices to our residents, doing what we can to help keep the numbers down in our city. So with that, I want to mention the bonus program. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share bonuses with our employees this year. That has been a fantastic opportunity. I've been doing it, wanted to do it in person with each person, masked up and risk managed, but I've had the opportunity to meet the majority of our employees and hand them those bonuses. And I've seen some of the responses back from them. I'm sure you've seen even more. Thank you for keeping them in mind and doing that. One of the fun things was doing the crossing guards. I tried to drive around the city in 2.5 days to get all of our crossing guards. I got several of them. One of them was on the 11th, Veterans Day, because the city hall was closed. So I spent that day driving around the city, meeting crossing guards in the snow. And as tough as it was for me in the snow, I thought, they are out there not complaining, protecting our children in the snow. So giving them a bonus was well deserved. It was well deserved for all of our employees. It's been an unusual year. They've had to pull together in some unusual ways, but they did it. Our residents have been cared for this entire year, despite the issues and problems we had to do. So thank you again. That's the end of my report. Any questions?
Questions for the mayor? All right, I'm not seeing any hands go up. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate your work. Oh, and thank you for arranging to feedback information to me about the budget coming right up.
Mr. Lee, CAO's report.
Thank you, Council. I want to spend a minute telling you about some of the amazing employees we have and the hard work they're doing. Let me give you a few examples. We have a detective, Detective Jeter, who, when he heard that one of our trailers was stolen from our city's public works site and then posted for sale on a social media platform, he looked at the picture of the post for sale and digitally stitched together the perspective of the mountains to be able to figure out the location where that trailer was. We were able to recover the trailer. It was incredible detective work. He spent many hours on it, but it saved the city a ton of money. We were able to recover the trailer and prosecute the offender. We have 3 employees in Public Works, Tony Miller, Colton Brewer, and Troy Murphy. They heard that Dannon was closing down for a little while. They jumped on that opportunity with Dannon closing down for a couple of hours to replace the water meter at Dannon, a large PRV, things that we could not replace and help Dannon stay up and operating. But when they went down and they heard about that option, they jumped on things quickly and took care of it. And then, Mike Moon in our fire department with COVID, it's turned his job upside down. He is the one who oversees our training, and he's been our COVID expert in the fire department. He's been working overtime every weekend, making sure he's coordinating with every shift that's there, dealing with all the training issues in all of our different platoons in fire. Just absolutely fantastic work. Just want to let you know about some of those examples. Today is International GIS Day. I didn't know that, but we have a phenomenal GIS staff. In fact, our GIS division, I would say, is one of the tops in the state of any city. We just really have great GIS employees. Their job is to be responsible for all things related to the geography of the city and the geographic spatial analysis of the city. So that's making maps, but it goes way beyond that. It's making applications that involve geographic tracking so that we can have interactive computer applications and maps that show where things are located, where our assets are stored, everything like that. So to celebrate International GIS Day, you might have seen there's a fun post on our city's Facebook page. Speaking of GIS, the GIS and the community engagement team have teamed up. They're working with 7 other cities to create a very fun map on our city. Our GIS servers will host this map, but it's a valley-wide map of holiday lights to help people get out, enjoy the holiday season, but staying socially distant, kind of like the storybook event that Councilwoman Worthen mentioned earlier. The events team's been very hard at trying to pivot and create moments of joy in the community without gathering socially. Lastly, David Cottle is the president of our Employees Association in the city. He and I have been working very hard together on making some changes to the way the Employee Association is structured. I'm going to send you an email with details. However, we're asking you for your support with the restructuring of the Employee Association so that we can make it more active, make it more of a meaningful part of our community and a more meaningful part of the organization. As a result of that, we're going to need the council to consider for proposal and a resolution which would create an employee committee that would function as part of the Employee Association. So watch for that email that will spell out the details, and I'll wait to hear back from you and hopefully proceed with a resolution to that effect. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, for the CAO report this evening. Thank you.
Any questions tonight for Mr. Lee? All right. Thanks, Corbin. So moving on to unfinished business, there is not anything on our list that hasn't already been addressed or doesn't already have a date when it's going to be coming back. We should be hearing again about the PC form-based zone here pretty quick. This was one of the items that we touched on in the workshop that Mr. Langford mentioned is in the pipeline. This one is right now targeting going to the Planning Commission in December. So that should be coming to us here hopefully January, February, and we'll have a lot of other items right behind it. But that was one that had started with us that we should be seeing again here soon. Everything else, the dates are listed as anticipated. With that, we will move on to our consent items. Tonight, we have 2 items listed for consent. I did not receive a request to have either of them pulled. They are both just approval of minutes from prior meetings. So I would look to the council for a motion. I'm only seeing video from 3 beside myself. So, oh, there we go. Is there somebody who would please make a motion?
I move that we approve agenda item 5A and B.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Whitelock, second by Councilmember Worthen. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. I believe Mr. Anderson, you're doing the vote tonight, right?
That is correct. So we'll start with Council Chair McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Pack,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Worthen,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes 7-0.
All right, so we will move on now. We do have a public hearing this evening. Process for participating in the public hearing is the same as the process for citizen comments. If you'd like to join by phone, there's the phone numbers to do so. We've got the meeting numbers down at the bottom. If you'd like to speak, hit the little icon that looks like a hand. When it's your turn, when you click on that, it'll turn green so that we know that you're wanting to speak. When it's your turn, you'll get something that looks like this, asking you to unmute your microphone. There's an option for chat down below. Again, we're not responding to the chat. The council does not monitor nor respond to that. Rather, it's just for you to provide your contact information if somebody needs to follow up with you. Those chats go to Mr. Anderson, who takes that and then would reach back to you. If you were dialed in by phone only and would like to participate in the public hearing, you can hit *9 to raise your hand. You won't have a little icon like this, but *9 for those who are dialed in by phone lets us know that you'd like to speak. So we'll run through that again when we're at that point, but we'll start this with a little bit of background. And Mr. McCandless, you're going to talk us through the Udall commercial rezone that's been proposed.
I am. Thank you. Members of the council, this property, just to orient you with the site, is located at 7592 South, 5490 West. It's just east of the Smiths on 5600 West. Can you go to the next slide? There it is. So the current property, or the property, is about 5 acres. It's it's located here. It's outlined. The current zoning on the property is RR.1D, and it means that it's simply a rural residential, single family residential lot, size of 1 acre minimum. The Smiths is located just off to the lower left side of the screen. I think I've got an overview or a larger map that shows that later on in the presentation. The current zoning, or the current land use designation, is for very low density residential. And excuse me, the applicant is requesting to rezone the property to an SC2 zoning district to accommodate some future commercial and office development. So this is the proposed future land use map. And then if you can go to the next slide, this just shows you the overview, the slide that I was talking to you about earlier. This is the site. This is the Smiths. This piece of property, can you see my cursor?
No, we cannot, but
okay.
You can direct me where to place mine.
Right there. So that property is just on the south side of the arrow, is all subdivided, and it will be developed, and it is developing as commercial use. We've got a number of applications on that property. To the right of the cursor, and in that large vacant area, that zoned actually it's an R3, but it's zoned for senior housing. So it's in our SHO zoning district. But as I mentioned, the site is, the applicants are requesting to rezone the entire site. You go down to the next slide. I think they've submitted a concept plan of how that might develop in the future. As you can see, there's a number of buildings that are on there, and they'll develop as office and commercial. with access down on Highlands Loop Road and then to a future street that's on the north side of that. So that's what's on the table. And the question is whether or not you feel like that zoning is appropriate, whether you think that the rezoning to a commercial zone is appropriate for that site, and given the adjoining uses in the area. It did go to the Planning Commission. They did recommend that the city council approved the land use map amendment. It was a 7-0 vote for both the rezoning and the future land use map amendment. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about it.
And Councilmember Whitelock will be the first one to ask.
Thank you. Mike, I just want to make sure that I'm correct. So when I'm looking at the circle, and then on your map, one of the prior slides, it said Highlands Loop Road. That road will go from 5600 to 5490, correct?
It does. It goes completely. It goes through. Right. It's on that south side of that.
So
piece.
if we approve this, then as they build this, they'll be responsible to do what with that road?
There, I think at least the south half of the road is in place now. I think the Petersons had developed most of that on their property. There is a pioneering agreement in place for the Udall piece, and so they'd be responsible for their share of the costs of improving that road. They're aware of that. So that's something that they would need to take care of when this property develops in the future.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't want to assume because my nursing professor said never do that.
All right, any other questions for Ray? All right, so for the public hearing, now that we've had some background from staff, the applicant does have an opportunity to address the council. I'm seeing Dave and Laurel Udall on the meeting. Ray, am I safe in assuming that's them?
Yes,
the applicant?
that's them.
All right. So Udalls, would you like a moment or two to add anything else to what's been said?
Yes.
Please proceed. You can have a few minutes and share anything else that you'd like to. Just to give you a quick heads up, after your comments, we will disable speaking for you and we'll open up the public hearing. Let anybody from the public who wishes to speak, they can address the council. And then after the public hearing, you can have up to 3 minutes to respond to anything that came up during that public hearing. That follow-up section is not for any new information. Now would be your opportunity for that. So please proceed.
So my name's Dave Udall, and this is my dear beloved wife, Laurel. Can you see us?
No, we're not able to see you. We only have audio.
Okay, no problem. So we're citizens of this great state with you guys, and we live out in Linden, Utah, and we love it. And we're happy and feel privileged to make this proposal to the city council, which are all you wonderful people. We've been very impressed with how conscientious you all are this is our second meeting that we've been involved with, and we're very impressed with your commemoration of the fallen officers sometime back. And we're very patriotic people and love to support the police. And we're glad that we're glad so much that our state and people in our wonderful state are not the type that would ever say, oh, we'd like to defund the police in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, so we're really happy to be here. We enjoyed meeting with the mayor. We ran into him down at your wonderful town hall there, which is a wonderful building. And we're very impressed with Mayor Burton. And we're glad to be here today. So I'm going to turn the time over to my beloved wife, Laurel, and she's going to make the presentation.
Okay, city council members and planning commission and the mayor, thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak with you tonight briefly. We've been very, very impressed with the planning of your city of West Jordan. And we've gone out there several times and we just love how it's grown and developed. And we think you've done a tremendous job of planning that great city of West Jordan. The proposed amendment conforms to and is consistent with the adopted goals, objectives, and policies set forth in the city general plan. The development pattern contained on the land use map adequately provides the appropriate optional sites for the use or change of proposed amendment. The proposed amendment will be compatible with other land uses existing or planned in the vicinity. The proposed amendment constitutes an overall improvement to the adopted general land use map and is solely for the good and benefit of all. The proposed amendment will not adversely impact the neighborhood, the community as a whole, by significantly altering, accepting, or land use patterns and requiring larger or more expensive public infrastructure improvements. Right now, there's sufficient water and sewage for our proposed buildings. The proposed amendment is consistent with other adopted plans, codes, and ordinances. We're happy to see that the Peterson brothers have developed all kinds of commercial sites that are going in, such as Starbucks, the car wash, senior living, etc., right across the street. And we're so thrilled with that beautiful Highland Loop Road that just got put in. We were so excited to see that go in. So we're proposing that we have a land map amendment and a rezoning. So it goes to a commercial rezoning. The population of West Jordan is over 116,000, with the fourth most populous city in Utah with over 3,000 business licenses. We love the economic development of West Jordan, which says businesses of all size are welcome. Our economic development team works to attract new businesses and foster an environment where businesses can thrive. I just think it's remarkable that you guys have Boeing and Dannon and Amazon and Cisco and Mountain American, Cypress Credit Union, and Gardner Village is my favorite, but it's it's just a wonderful community, and we hope and pray that you guys will see it fit to consider our plans for rezoning so that we can put in a professional dental office building and possibly a drive-through restaurant. The master plan has 4.3 acres, and we donated.
Your microphone is trailing off there a little bit.
Oh, a quarter of the acre.
There you are.
A quarter of the acre we donated for the roundabout, and so the 4.73 acres is what we'd like to finally get it rezoned and to amend the 2012 master plan. This is a little bit outdated simply because there's been so much commercial development around our land. And our dear mother, it's my mother-in-law, but my husband's mother, bought the land from my husband as a real estate agent back in 1977, 43 years ago. He just passed away last year, and it has fallen into the hands of the three brothers. And so that's what we're proposing to this wonderful community of West Jordan with your growing population. We feel like these professional office buildings and perhaps a drive-through restaurant would adequately fit the city. So we're open to comment or questions.
Your microphone's having issues again.
Well, that's the end of my talk.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from council for the applicants? All right. I'm not seeing any questions from council at this time. So you'd also let me turn off speaking for you. We'll come back to you, like I said, at the end of the public hearing. And now we will move forward with the public hearing. I'm already seeing one hand raised to indicating they'd like to speak. If you would like to address the council on this rezone, here's the information to do so. When you log in, like I said, at the bottom of the screen, hit the little hand icon to let us know that you'd like to speak. If you're dialed in by phone, press *9 so that we're aware. That's if you're by phone, press *9. So for the public hearing, give me just a moment to get our timer out here. And we'll go to Amy Martz. Amy, good to have you here this evening. Let me open that up so you can speak. And there you go. You'll have 3 minutes, please. Amy.
Good evening, Amy Martz. I live at 5438 West Bridal Vista Circle. We are back again for probably the fourth time now as things around us have been developing. I just would like to reiterate what I've said in the past about the citizens relying on your plan, and that rural residential is surrounding this property to the north and to the east. So when we buy our properties, we rely on what the map says and hope that the areas around us will remain similar to our homes. When this council approved the senior center, which will be to the south of this property, you guys promised a setback so that the homes, the apartment, 3-story apartments would be further from 5490, so they wouldn't be looking down into our backyards. And I would like to ask for the same type of setback from these buildings, also from the road, so that they're further from the homes that exist already. You've got parking lot interspersed with building. It would be easy to just rearrange that so the parking was closest to 5490 and the buildings were further from the homes on the east. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak tonight for the public hearing? Give you just a few more seconds. Got one person connected by phone and then 12 others on directly in the Zoom, but I'm not seeing any hands there. So I will close the public hearing and go back to the applicant first and give you a couple minutes if you would like. You don't have to, but if you'd like a moment to respond to the comment from Ms. Martz, you're welcome to do so. So Udalls, you should, there you go. All right, and I'll start the timer. Yeah, if you'd like to respond, you're welcome to.
Yes, we appreciate your concern. That's why we were hoping that the dental offices that we put in provides a buffer, because we were thinking professional office spaces.
The microphone's coming in and out. Can you position a little more closely to the microphone so it's?
We were hoping, can you hear me better?
Yes, much.
We were hoping, yes, we were hoping that the commercial dental offices that we've proposed will serve as a buffer from traffic and all that, because usually dental offices and professional offices are closed on holidays, weekends, and after 5 o'clock. And so we were hoping that would serve as a more quiet alternative to commercial development, where you wouldn't get a lot of traffic in the evenings and on weekends, and that it would serve as a buffer between your beautiful community and what we're proposing.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so with that, we'll now turn to the council for discussion and or a motion, and we'll start with Councilmember Jacob. We'll move to Councilmember Whitelock, and then we'll go to Councilmember Green. So Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Just really quick, I wanted to just address what Ms. Martz mentioned in her comment. When that kind of a specific request is not so much a rezone specific item as it is a site plan item. So this will come back to the Planning Commission at some future point for a site plan approval and a subdivision or a subdivision approval, depending on what they end up doing. And that will be the body that will make that decision as far as setbacks and things like that goes. So I encourage you, for those of you that have the concern about setbacks and things like that, to come to that meeting and make your concerns known there as well. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Jacob. Councilmember Whitelock.
I guess this is a question because they mentioned maybe having a drive-through, I'm guessing on 5600. Have they negotiated or talked to anyone? Do they have any possibilities there?
Ray, do you know the answer to that one?
Are you talking on this piece?
Yeah.
On this piece, no, we don't have any formal site plan submittal. So we don't know at this point what's proposed or whether there will be a drive-through on this property.
Okay, so that's just the applicant's thought.
Right. Yeah, what you're looking at this point is just a concept plan of what might be developed on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Green.
I have to unmute myself. I start talking and it gives me this big flash across the screen. It's interesting. I have got emails both for and kind of against this project. I think that the negative or the less than positive email that I received is more about traffic on 5490 than it is anything. My question is, and we know that 5490 runs down to the corner to Highland Loop Road. This Ray, this may not be your question, but I'm wondering if there's not a way, and maybe we should be doing this anyway on 5490. So this is just maybe a suggestion to the mayor and traffic engineer, and maybe Scott and Ray, maybe you can help. But I'm wondering if with that commercial development there and a potential on the north side of Highland Loop Road, if we shouldn't have some signage that says, and I know we don't put from here on to a residential neighborhood, but that, you know, there's not an outlet. This isn't a through street. Can we make the, but the one question I do have besides that is, can we make the exit, if there's an exit from this property onto 5490, can we make it a right out? I mean, the left end doesn't bother me because they'll be turning left in, but can we make it a right out only, or at least have them, can we make that a restriction on the zoning to require that any exits on 5490 are a right turn or a right out only onto that street?
Oh, council member, let me weigh in on that. I think to piggyback on what Councilman Jacob mentioned, I think that would be more appropriate for a site plan review.
Okay.
From Highlands Loop Road as it hits 5490 and bends to the south down to 7800 South, that's all public and that's all been improved. Points north to what you were talking about is still mostly a private road, private lane. And so I believe if there hasn't been signage, there will be signage telling drivers that it is a private road. And I can work with our traffic engineer and make sure it's properly signed. I think that's a good idea.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council, or comments, thoughts, or perhaps a motion?
I'll give you a motion.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I move we approve ordinance number 20-45, amending the future land use map for the acreage located at 7592 South, 5490 West, from very low residential to community commercial, and rezone from rural residential to SC2.
Motion by Councilmember Whitelock, second. Best I can tell, that goes to Councilmember Lamb. Any discussion to the motion? All right, seeing none, let's vote. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Council Chair. Councilmember Green.
My space bar didn't work that time. Yes.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Council Chair McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Pack,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
and Councilmember Worthen.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Motion passes 7-0.
All right, moving on from our public hearing, we'll now talk about election code updates. This is item number 7A that would amend elements of the election code. We've had a work session to discuss some of this previously. Mr. Anderson, are you going to be talking us through this one? And I'm assuming Dave Quayle helping?
Yes.
All right, we'll open it up so we have yet one more attorney who can participate in the meeting.
So Councilmember Green and Councilmember McConaughey had suggested clarifying this. So you will find in the current code, you will find election code for the council in one section. You'll find another section of code in the mayor's section. So it's kind of scattered. This comprises of putting all the election code into one chapter of our city code. And if you remember from the work session we had, one of the things that, well, let me back up before we get there. So there's updated definitions. So some of the changes, amendments that are made will include an updated definition of a contribution so that the candidate's use or expenditure of personal funds is reportable. And let's see, next slide. It also requires current elected officials to file a financial disclosure each year, even if it's not in a election year. So what this would do is an elected official would file by June 15th to the city recorder just their campaign contribution report or campaign financial report since the last one that was made. Go ahead to the next slide. Or is that the end? Oh, there we go. The one that the council needs to decide tonight, if you remember from the work session, is the penalty for failure to file the annual report. Mr. Quayle provided 3 options that are here. So just kind of 1, 2, 3. And I don't know if you have questions about this with Dave Quayle or Mr. Quayle right now, but it's what kind of penalty does the council want to attach to not filing a campaign disclosure? If you're a candidate that's not elected for office and you fail to file a financial disclosure, the penalty is you're removed from the ballot. Obviously, council members would be in office, so that's what this is. And so the council need to determine what that is. If you want something that's different, there might than what's listed on the screen, or something else that we haven't included, my recommendation would be to decide what that is, and then we can bring it back at a future meeting, possibly for adoption later. So in essence, it combines everything into one section, adds clarity for campaign contribution, and requires elected officials to file a campaign disclosure each year.
I know in a prior conversation, Councilmember Green had mentioned he had a thought about a very simple solution to addressing penalty for failure to file. I had a thought there as well, but Councilmember Whitelock is the one who's following the preferred approach and raising her hand, so she'll get the floor first. Councilmember Whitelock.
Thank you. I have a question. When I read through, they all mentioned that was in June. I thought we said we'd do it in January so that it went along with some other form we were going to, our conflict of interest forms. Did I misunderstand from our work session?
I don't remember that specifically.
Okay. Well, I remember us talking about it and it made sense to me. So,
Yeah.
I, I, I don't need a punishment for people if they forget. I don't know. Sometimes you need time out, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just let it go. So that's just where I'm at. I'll be interested to hear discussion.
Councilmember Green.
Councilmember Whitelock, the reason we were actually originally a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away when Luke Skywalker was just before he was on the council. We were talking about having the report due in January. As Mr. Quayle and I talked about as we worked on this, we had actually moved it to June 1st, and then we decided that June 15th would be better, because then what it would do is that if a council member decides, if a sitting council member decides to not file for re-election, they just file the report and say, I'm not filing for re-election. Here's my final report ever, and I'm done. And so it that one tied into the election. The June 15th just tied into the election cycle better. Of course, if we decide eventually to go to ranked choice voting, maybe June 15th is not the right day because we eliminate a primary. So I don't think anybody's tied to that June 15th date. If we wanted to move it back to January, I don't think anybody'd have any problems with it. I'm pretty much in the same boat as Councilmember Lightlock. When we were talking about having this report due, there really wasn't an idea that somebody was going to be penalized, and to make it a misdemeanor or prevent somebody from the ballot, that was never the intent of this. And my personal opinion is you look at the screen in line number 2, in that paragraph, lines 391 and 392, my thought would be that it says that if an elected official fails to file an updated campaign finance report by whatever date we decide, as required by the paragraph, I would change that to elected official, by the way, but it doesn't matter. He or she may be subject to censure. And I you know what, to me, that's about, that's about as good as, okay, if the council, if I forgot to, if I deliberately didn't file my campaign report, or this finance report, not, because that provides for the city recorder to contact us and do it. If at some point in time we determine that it was deliberate, then the council could just look at it and say, you know what, we're going to issue a censure, but we don't have to, because my personal opinion is that if somebody doesn't turn in a campaign finance report or a finance report by the deadline, if somebody runs against them, that's going to be used against them anyway, and that's a bad enough penalty. So I can see Kayleen's head nodding yes. So if I were going to put a penalty in there, I'd say he or she may be subject to censure, and I'd call it good, and just that's what I'd put. But that's just me. It doesn't have to be strong, because I think the stronger message is what we're looking for is open. What we're looking for is for some transparency, prevent the stuff that happened in Sandy. And if somebody doesn't file a campaign finance or doesn't file an elected official campaign report, it's going to be used against them anyway, so it doesn't matter. So that would be my thought there, but that's just, like I said, that's me.
So my thought with this one, similar basis, a little different conclusion. I do want to jump ahead just a second here. So after the proposed penalties, there's also this section adding a duty for the city recorder to remind those that they have an obligation to file. So it's not just somebody could easily forget, but the city recorder, one of the things added to their to-do list is remind the elected officials that that is required. So it shouldn't be just something that they forgot. But coming back here, I can't remember the language when we discussed this. I thought that this was, and maybe it's just in the conversation, it indicated a willful act of omission, like willfully avoiding filing rather than just forgetting. But rather than limit the penalty, since there are a couple options that have been provided here, you'll see there's this that's provided by city code. We have state code, a couple options there as well. Rather than say state code does not apply, my preferred approach would be, as we word this, we say something to the effect of the elected official may, not shall, but the elected official may be subject to remedies permitted by federal, state, local law, or council policies and procedures. That way it's not anything that's forced, but it still gives people an opportunity to follow those other options for redress. And it also is something that does not have to be initiated by the city council. I wouldn't want to have something in our code that says this portion of state law doesn't apply. You can't seek redress under this. You can only do X, Y, or X or Y. So that would be my thought, just changing the shall to may and saying subject to penalties that are on the books, federal, state, local, and council policies and procedures. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Chair McConaughey. Maybe I'm just really bad at raising funds, but since I was elected 3 years ago, I haven't been given any funds. And so I have nothing to report, nor will I have anything to report until next year if I decide to run. So for me, this all seems like a little bit big brotherish. I understand something happened in Sandy. I don't know the details of what happened there with whatever happened and who the person was, but we've been a city since 1967, and not once has this city or any city council required anybody in office to do a yearly report on funds they have received. Now, chances are that's because most city council members don't get or raise funds. I don't know. So I guess some do, maybe $100 there, $100, $200 there. But if anything comes to a vote on election code updates, I'm going to be a no on any of it, because I just don't think that we need to turn in a yearly thing that says how much we did. When we run, we have to put how much we have before it starts. So if we have $100, we got to put $100 in that we started when we run, and that happens. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we need to add this. I'm not sure why this even came up. But for me, I'm a big no on adding any update that makes us or any official in the future have to do a yearly number of how much they raised in the off years that they weren't running. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't disagree with Councilmember Lamb for the most part, but I also don't really mind it. There's going to be a whole lot of reports filed with zeros on them. Like, yeah, I had $100 left over after my last campaign and still got $100 left over from my last campaign. And that's going to be every single report except with the, very few exceptions. However, if we do go this route, my suggestion as far as penalty would be that the elected official should be required to file the past reports before they are eligible to file for re-election. That's the thought that I had, is that you're ineligible to file for re-election if you missed reports until you file that report. And you can obviously backdate that or do whatever you got to do, but that was my thought as far as potential penalty was concerned. I wouldn't want to attach anything criminal to it either necessarily.
Councilmember Worthen.
So I guess when you're last, everybody always says what you're going to say. I same thing. I mean, I haven't collected any money, but I don't mind reporting just for transparency. It's not a big deal. It's, again, like what Councilman Jacobs just said, is there's going to be a lot of zeros. And actually, like, what he's saying is that if you're going to go up for election again, that if you don't have those turned in, you have to have them turned in. So, I mean, maybe that's just the penalty of doing it. I mean, we're all adults. I mean, I like the reminder. That's nice because we all get super busy. But if we have the reminder, there's no reason we can't fill out a simple form, turn it in, and helps with transparency. It's a nice way to do it. And yeah, I think the penalty should be you can't run for election again if all your paperwork isn't in a row. So I guess that would be the only penalty that would make sense to me.
Councilmember Pack.
Well, thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree. I think that's a great happy medium between the two ideas, that you don't necessarily have to file, as Councilmember Lamb mentioned, since unless you're going to re-up, unless you're going to reapply and run for office again, and then it would need to be submitted. That's a great brainstorm option, Councilmember Jacob. I know when I file taxes, my CPA always asks what my ending balance is in my business account. And it makes me think, is there any, I haven't seen any code that requires that a starting balance for one election cycle in your account needs to be synonymous with the ending balance of your last filed report at the end of your previous campaign. Am I correct in that? So really, well, I guess that's a big question there too. Currently, isn't that the way that it operates? No, there isn't any mandate to have your last report match your first report. I guess
I believe the form says what was the balance from the last report submitted. And then
but it doesn't need to match the last report is what I mean. There's no teeth in it or any.
I'd have to find my last report, even know what I put on the last.
Yeah, I'm near positive
Dude, I
it
zeroed
requires
out
that
my
you
account.
disclose what the ending balance was from your last. It says where did it end and where are you ending now? But Tangi would probably be the expert on that one. Is that something,
Right.
Tangi, do you happen to know that off the top of your head?
Hi, Chair McConaughey. I believe that you have to start your financial with where you ended. So at the end of your campaign, if you had $50, your next financial set, you have to start with $50.
Or you need to report what was submitted in the interim.
Correct, or you have to report where that money went. But you have to end with a number and you have to begin with a number, the same number.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you. That makes sense. So to me, that does seem like a happy medium there, as Councilmember Lamb mentioned. So it's not Big Brother watching over you if there's nothing that you're going to be doing in the future. Whereas I would rather err on the side of transparency so that it doesn't seem that anything's being hidden. So if you are wanting to run again for re-election, to definitely bring that current. I do agree if you just forget to submit it or it's late or that there shouldn't be a removal from office or a fine or some censure other than, hey, you need to bring this current if you want to do this again. Thank you.
So before we start going around again, I want to add a couple thoughts here. From my perspective, I'm not worried about the members of this council. I'm not concerned with that. I know historically it's been relatively low dollar amounts. This first came to my mind when I received a campaign contribution that was the contributor intentionally timed it to happen after the last deadline for reporting. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I wondered how many other elected officials have something like that. How many maybe put their own money out there so they can say that they're self-funded, but then December 20th, they receive $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 from some group, from a special interest group, to pay off the debt. So in those cases, there's a potential that the elected official could make it look like this is self-funded, but people don't see the tie to where that money's actually coming from. As I traveled for work, I spent a lot of time in other cities. Like I I probably shouldn't call out Chicago specifically, but if you have elected officials who are continually raising funds, I would want to know that a mayor is receiving funds, campaign contributions from somebody during the course of the year. And I might be watching a little bit more closely to see if there's any sort of special attention given to them. Now, like I said, I don't worry about that here in West Jordan. We haven't had issues. I don't anticipate that we would have issues, but I don't want to wait until there's an issue before we start watching. And in the interest of transparency to the public, I went ahead and after I received the campaign contribution that I said was intentionally marked or provided after the filing deadline had passed, I still went ahead and I filed an updated statement so that I didn't have to wait 4 years should I decide to run again, so that that could be disclosed. A lot can happen during that time. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm not worried about myself. As Councilmember Lamb shared, I'm probably not going to be getting anything else anyway. And it's going to be a lot of zeros. But if there are other elected officials that are receiving donations, I'd like to know. And as a member of the voting public, I would like to know as well. So whether someone's going to be running for election or not in the future is irrelevant to me. And I'd like to have that report submitted. And if it's not submitted, then I like having the options available that are already outlined in state code, or maybe even some of the things that are here in local code. But in order for that to be considered a crime, I mean, it would have to be adjudicated through the courts. So that's not something that we could easily do. So I don't see any harm by leaving this open to say may be subject to methods of correction that are already out there. So that was my thought and my perspective, and why I was pushing to bring this up. As far as hands that have come back up, we've got Councilmember Green, and then we've got Councilmember Worthen following. So Councilmember Green. And we need to see if we can't get him a functioning space bar.
Oh, never mind. So just Councilmember Pack, the part of this came up. What happens in other cities, what's happened in other cities is that somebody will end with a balance of, let's say, $100. And then the next campaign, they'll say, what's in your account? And all of a sudden they have $10,000 and somebody says, all right, where'd you get that 10K? And they weren't required to report anything on those campaign contributions because the report's not due. And so that's what this was intended, as Chair McConaughey talked about. I actually like Zach's or Councilmember Jacobs' idea is if, and maybe this ties back into Councilmember Whitelock's comment, that if we did make this January and we had to turn this in January with an annual ethics statement, if it's not turned in, you just can't file. You're precluded from filing in a city election, and that may be, and if you're not running for a re-election, then you really don't care, because you probably haven't raised any money. And if you're going to plan on re-election, you'll file it. And so I've sat here and I've thought about this, and Chair McConaughey, I mean, I like your idea of flexibility, but I really do like the idea of maybe just backing this up to January sometime and just saying, if you don't file it, you can't run. And that may be just the simple thing. And if you want to run, file the report, it catches you up, and then you're good to go and you can run. So, and since the city recorder is the one that keeps track of this, that's very easy for the city recorder to say, dude, you haven't filed your campaign report, file it before I can accept your declaration of candidacy. So Zach may be onto something, but I think we'd have to back it up before June, before the deadlines to file. And so I'd be good going back to the January deadline on that one. So just a couple of thoughts there.
Councilmember Worthen, followed by Councilmember Pack.
So I do like that, backing up the deadline. And then the whole idea is you can't file if you don't have these reports done. The only problem becomes is, someone like myself who I've got another 3 years to go before I have to run again. So my husband's going to love this, but I totally have to give him credit for this, but it might not be such a bad idea. So public shaming, I guess. So it's really not fair to the city recorder to say, okay, these are due whatever date they're due. And then 3 of us turn them in and 4 of us don't because we're slow or we just didn't get to it. And then she's got to go after them and chase them down. I mean, we're adults. We should be turning things in on time. But if we're not, maybe we just list them on different every time we have a meeting that we're still waiting to get these reports from these people, and they'll get sick and tired of seeing their name. So I mean, it's kind of a funny, my husband says, he likes that kind of thing. It's like the kid that has to wear the sign when he gets in trouble in the corner of the street saying, I called my sister a bad name. Kind of public shaming thing. I don't know. I mean, maybe if Chad wasn't turning in his forms, he'd get sick of seeing his name on every single meeting. So it's just a thought. It's way out there. It's out of the box, but it's me. But I definitely like the idea of, I think we should do them. I mean, I think we owe that to the public. I do think we have the transparency, and it's not that big of a deal. I just don't think the city recorder should have to chase anybody down. So I think there has to be a way for not punishment, but just get it done kind of thing. Oh, that's just me.
Councilmember Pack, your hand was up earlier, but it's gone down. No longer have a comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Great conversation. Thank you very much. So if I'm understanding correctly, Chair, you're saying that this helps because it's not just on an election year, it's that if someone is receiving continual funds, or it doesn't even need to be continual, maybe it's just a one-time fund from a special interest group, 6 months into the position or a year or 2 years, you'd want to be able to know that, because that might affect policy, that might affect voting through the tenure of that elected term that's multi-year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the thought again, not anticipating any issues here in West Jordan, but let's say I were elected mayor and somebody came and donated to my re-election campaign a total of $200,000 the first week of January as I've just started my term. And now I cut a contract for them as a fertilizer supplier for our parks. Well, it's going to be a long time before that comes to light, and anybody really looks at it. And that's where my concern would be, well, if I'm not planning to run, if there's transparency, there's an opportunity to head off fraud. And while I recognize we don't want to punish somebody or publicly shame somebody for a simple mistake, we also should be careful that the castigation for fraud is not, well, maybe I'll just skip running. I'll be able to pocket the funds and not run again, rather not disclose that $200,000. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. The preventing something larger. I don't anticipate we would have issues, but that was my mindset. So thank you for letting me clarify that.
Sure, thank you. Then that makes sense. And again, I'd rather err on the side of transparency. So that's fine, so that fertilizer doesn't stink, right? So no pun intended there. Well, I guess maybe it was. But also, I'd agree if it might change the date if we do adopt ranked choice voting. It still might make sense to just have all forms due at the same time at the beginning of a calendar year with the fiscal disclosure and all the other forms that we need to fill out. I mean, I'm flexible for whatever date, but at least that way everything can be done at once. So thank you. Great conversation. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Lamb, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, if we're looking to start this January 2021, we're pretty close to January 2021. I don't know if we'd be able to hit that deadline. So do we want to look at having this start June 15th of 2021 this coming year, and then from there on out have it on January? I don't know. I think this January is gonna be a little bit cutting it close to try and get it done. So we have a lot that needs to be done on a macro basis to make sure it's all set up correctly and the forms are done and things are set up. So I don't know what the council's thinking about doing this, but I think this January is too quick to get that put together.
I don't think there'd be an issue putting this back to whatever date the council decides. Additionally, council members, if there is anything, everybody has the ability to file voluntarily. You don't have to wait until a deadline. So since there's no, I don't anticipate any issue with this council or mayor. And we should point out that this is all elected officials. So this would have pertained to both the council and the mayor. Personally, I don't see any issue of any start date that we choose. It can be out a year from now. I wouldn't have any issue with that. Councilmember Jacob does have his hand up though. So let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah, just one last thought as far as timing. I would not make the report necessarily due in January because there's a report in election year that's due in December. You know, so that would be awfully superfluous for that, at least that first report. I would suggest the 1st of June as a time frame, just as to coincide with the filing period and to just for consistency's sake. That's about when you start, you know, thinking about filing and financings and stuff like that in an election year anyway, so might as well just keep it consistent. Just my thought.
All right. So as the council's been sharing thoughts, insights, and opinions, Mr. Quayle from our legal department has been patiently waiting to share his thoughts. I'm not seeing any other hands, so let's go to Mr. Quayle. David, your turn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Council. I just wanted to point out, as you have your discussion or consider options, that the 3 options that are in the staff report for you to look at are all options that will exist regardless of what this ordinance says specifically. They fall more into the line of existing federal, state, local law that I don't believe we can override by local ordinance. So the first option is the ethics committee that the city already has. A violation is already defined as just failing to satisfy a duty. That could fall within the definition of a violation. So someone could pursue the ethics commission route, which is option 1, irrespective of what the code says. The same as with option 2, that's a state law provision out of the municipal election campaign finance law. And that basically gives a private third party the right to file an injunction, so civil lawsuit, seeking to, in this circumstance, force an elected official to file a campaign finance. So that remedy will exist irrespective of what the council does. And the same is true for option 3. That's the criminal penalty and has the willful language in it. So it's the harshest penalty. And to be frank, I think it'd be hard to get there. And whether the district attorney would file a Class A misdemeanor or not, I don't know. But my intention with putting these 3 options out there was really to show what state law and local law already says about what penalties would be available in the circumstance of potential failure to file a campaign finance disclosure. So I just wanted to point that out as your discussion continues.
Thank you for the clarification. That helps my understanding. My understanding had not been that. My understanding from one of the memos was that we could decide which penalty would apply, and that's what we were deciding here. So knowing that these will be available regardless is, at least for me, quite helpful, which leads me down two paths. Number 1, going back to the original thought that I shared, the elected official may be subject to penalties already allowed under law, or option 2, get rid of if and just, rephrase this a little bit and just say elected officials shall file an updated campaign statement by June 15th or whatever the date is, and just leave it at that. If those other penalties are available, I guess my question is, do we really need to articulate what those penalties are? Or can we just say do it.
And if the penalties are
Sorry,
already
that
the
was
sorry, if the penalties are already the penalties, yeah, that was kind of a mute point of that discussion to discuss those.
yeah. Mr. Quayle, thoughts?
I would tend to agree that that's a perfectly legitimate way to write the code, is to end it with shall file on June 15th or January 1 or June 1. Because these remedies do exist, the point of putting in a specific penalty, in my mind, as someone drafting, would be to specify a fourth option. That's something maybe that isn't in law, or to clarify the intended route that the council would like to pursue. You know, there's nothing the council could do to stop a third party, for example, initiating a civil lawsuit to get an injunction. But it could provide the council itself with direction as to, okay, we're going to go the ethics commission route with this, or we're going to turn this over to the DA as a criminal matter. So that would be the point of inserting something specific from where I'm sitting. But otherwise, I agree that these are penalties that exist.
So I guess, council, how would you like to proceed with this? The proposed motion that we've got for tonight is to request staff to make updates and then bring this back as an item for consent. So as we're going to say, or if we're going to ask for a modification, what would you like that modification to be? I still like the idea of pointing out that there are penalties and saying penalties that may already exist under current law or council policies and procedures. Is there support to proceed that route, or would the preference be to just leave it with an elected official shall file as of the date?
Simpler the better, in my opinion.
If we do it simple, we would just drop paragraph 2, because the first part of paragraph D up on about page or line 386 specifically says must submit a updated report no later than June 15th. So if we want to keep it simple with no penalties with what's already existing under law, we would just drop paragraph 2 completely. If we want, like what Mr. Quayle suggests, if we want to give some council idea of what the direction the council would prefer, then we would put a penalty there. Personally, I hadn't anticipated much of a penalty, so I'm okay with just dropping paragraph 2 completely. But I think I do agree with if we're gonna, like, I think what Council Member Jacobs said, let's move it back to June 1st, and that may be a better deadline than June 15th. But just a couple of thoughts there.
I think if we were to, I love how liberally Council Member Green uses the delete button as we're going through city code. If we could swap out the microphone control, delete versus backspace, or excuse me, versus spacebar, wouldn't be an issue with the mic ever. I wouldn't object to deleting number 2, but I'm also wondering about number 1. If an elected official does not seek re-election, the last campaign finance report filed will be marked as terminated to include the campaign as season, and no further election campaign reports will be filed. If somebody starts and determines that or declares that this will be their last term in service, they may still be there for nearly 4 years. This seems to me to indicate that they can say, you know what, I'm done, I'm not going to run again, and they could potentially go the remainder of their term without filing because they're claiming they're not going to run again. So to alleviate any misconceptions, I would say delete 1 and 2.
I'd be good with that. I think that's simple. Just says file a campaign report. And if there's a penalty, I mean, the city recorder will dog us, and if it becomes at some point in time, obviously, I think Council Member Worthen's right. At some point in time, it's going to be just a public shaming. I'm not sure that we're going to ever see a substantial penalty, but I just think peer pressure is probably enough and saying, hey, you didn't comply with the rule. Honestly, I think that's going to be good enough for me, but
Councilmember Worthen?
And that, I mean, that was, all joking aside, that was really my intent is, you know, if you're not filing these reports, your constituents should know you're not filing them. And then they're going to start asking why after a while. It's like, well, why aren't you filing these? I mean, just like anybody, I mean, when they start running for office, it's like, don't just be transparent. So just turn them in. So all joking aside, yeah, it kind of turns into that eventually because people are going to start asking questions. So that was really my point of it.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So if the point is that we want them to report if they've got anything after their last financial statement that was filed with the clerk, is it necessary that everybody keep filing them, or can it be just if you receive anything after that period, you're required to declare it?
I guess that would probably be a good question for Tangi, because I believe the form, I don't think the form is mandated. There are certain things in code that must be included in that. But I'm wondering if administratively we can say if there is nothing that's been received, a simple communication, like even an email from the person to the recorder saying nothing's been received, if that would suffice rather than having to fill out the entire form and carry everything over and signature and all that. Tangi, can you respond to Kayleen's or Councilmember Whitelock's question?
I wish I had a good answer there. I would think that an email would suffice, but I don't know that it has to be a financial report. I don't know. I'd have to ask Rob to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was kind of tongue in cheek about the adding additional attorneys to the call, but every time I try and make a joke like that, they always prove their value. So we'll put either Mr. Wall or Mr. Qualey in front of that bus. Is that level of detail something that can be handled administratively or something that would have to be addressed by ordinance? As far as the simplicity of if no contributions were received, how simple can we make that? Is that something that's got to be codified?
So I'm not sure. So is the question, if no campaign contributions have been made, could you just send the city recorder an email saying, I have not received any campaign contributions or made any expenditures? That's the question?
Councilmember Whitelock's nodding her head, yes.
I mean, my recommendation, and having worked with Tangi on the forms, would be to be consistent with the forms. The forms are not extensive. It would simply be writing 2 zeros and scanning the form and attaching it. So my recommendation for consistency in all campaign finance disclosure documents would be to continue to use the forms we have. That being said, there is no state mandate on what the form has to look like. The information needs to be disclosed. We have a form. That's what we use. That's what we provide to all the candidates. It seems to make sense to keep all of our documents the same, but there's no state law requirement that I'm aware of that would require the use of our specific form. It only requires the disclosure of the information. So you could do it by email. I'm not sure that that's best practice or something that's done in many cities. I'd have to look into that.
Councilmember Whitelock, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
The mayor has his hand up.
Yep, Mayor Burton was next.
Thank you. This question is probably for Dave Qualey, because since I don't have any money for fertilizer, I'll worry about that area. My question is, I think those penalties, all 3 of them that they listed on the state end, are way too harsh for what we're talking about. Could we is there a place we put this instead of in the city code, make it someplace else so those penalties would not apply? Put it in city rules or something like that, and then we could still follow through that way. Because all those things are on there, every one of those three things, especially number 3, that one sounds very, very strong. When it makes it a misdemeanor and you can never run for office again, I don't know. I just feel like those are extreme cases.
And Mayor, I do believe, particularly with respect to number 3, that is drafted by the legislature for extreme circumstances. And that's why it has the language that it has to be willful and things of that nature. It has to, in my mind, and this would really be up to the district attorney, Sim Gill, would be something along the lines of you intentionally took that $200,000 and you intentionally hid it, and then you got a kickback from the fertilizer company. Unfortunately, other than item 1, which is the ethics commission, which the city council does have control over because that is a city code provision that it could modify separately, there's no mechanism that I'm aware of that would allow the city council to supersede state law. So what the legislature has allowed private parties to do as far as suing or penalties it's put in place for municipal officers and elected officials are what they are. I'm not aware of any way we could draft a code that would be superseding of those state law provisions.
Okay, so if I go back to those penalties then, would all 3 be under the district attorney or just number 3?
Just number 3. Once a criminal offense gets to a class A misdemeanor, the city loses prosecutorial jurisdiction over that. So that has to go through the district attorney's office. Item number 2, that's a civil lawsuit. So there's no criminal penalty attached to that. The real penalty would be if John Doe filed a lawsuit against someone for failing to comply with campaign finance disclosure laws, they have a right to seek their attorney's fees if they're successful from the candidate or elected official. So the district attorney wouldn't have any involvement in that. That would essentially be a private lawsuit between an individual and the candidate and or elected official.
Okay, that makes me feel better. So number 3 would be actually through the district attorney. So if it's egregious, then they should go through there. And I feel better about that. I just thought it could with any situation. So number 2, even if number 2 didn't exist in our society, it could happen anyway, I presume. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so number 1 is really the only one that would pertain unless somebody's being really wrong.
Yeah, and that's within the council's control in the sense that you can amend the ethics provisions to exclude this duty from being a violation under our Ethics Act. But that's the only one where a penalty could be tweaked or removed. But that would require an amendment to a separate provision of the code that isn't contemplated in what you are looking at here tonight.
You are most helpful. Thank you. I feel much better about those now, and I take back my questions since I have the answers. Thank you.
All right.
Mayor, isn't it nice to know you got some great attorneys?
It really is. Even though only one of them spoke, it's nice to know we have 2 of them here in case he didn't know the answer, but he did.
And we've got a third in the attendee forum if needed. So, all right. So back to the council. How would you like to see this modified before it's brought back? Again, the proposed motion is basically move to request staff to update item D2 to include a certain comment, or we could request that D be updated to strike 1 and 2. And then we have the question of the date. What do you guys think? What would you like?
We could also just strike D if we wanted to, correct?
We could. Someone like to make a motion? All right, well, let's look at the date, June 15th. Is there a date that you'd prefer other than June 15th?
I'd prefer June 1st.
June 1st. Any strong feelings about a date other than June 1st? All right. Then I would just make the motion to request staff to bring this back, striking D1, D2, and changing the date from June 15th to June 1st, and have this ready for consent in our next meeting.
I would second that motion.
All right, motion by Councilmember McConaughey, second by Councilmember Green. Any discussion to the motion? Councilmember Jacob.
Yes, just that it sounds like this is not necessarily going to be a unanimous vote, so we might want to not put it on consent, but put it on a business item.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me modify the motion instead of directing that be brought back on consent, just that it be brought back on a future agenda.
And I'm good with that to resecond.
Okay, perfect. Good thoughts, Councilmember Jacob. Any other discussion to this new motion or modified motion? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries 6-1 with Councilmember Lamb in opposition. All right, let's move on to our next item, which is refunding water revenue bonds. And this is Denise. So let me change this over and make sure she can speak.
We're saving money. I'll just give you a motion now.
Thank you. Don't make me present anything.
It was all there in the packet, ready to go. Oh, crap. I did not hit the save button there. Give me just a second because that was updated. While Denise, could you stall for 45 seconds and provide a quick overview while I'm fixing what I missed?
Sure. So council, we're coming to you with what we call a parameters resolution. And what that does is it sets the boundaries under which I can issue debt to refund 2 of our series of water bonds. The reason for the refunding is there's 5 very good reasons. Number 1, though, is to recognize a savings. We would recognize a net present value savings of about $302,405 by taking advantage of a better interest rate environment. The next one will be that we would lower annual debt service payments for the water fund, which would allow us to build a stronger foundation without relying on rate increases moving forward. It would minimize the risk of us not meeting the requirement of the debt coverage service or the debt coverage ratio, which you dealt with about 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago with a water rate increase required to cover that debt coverage ratio. Fourth one would be to stabilize the cash flows for the water impact fees. We're barely collecting enough water impact fee revenue to make this debt service payment. And if we don't collect enough water impact fee revenue, then it rests on the shoulders of the utility until the impact fees can recover a refund to the utilities. And the final one is that it increases our future bonding capacity. And that's important as we continue to move forward with some of these large residential developments that are going to require water storage. So we are working on agreements with them that will allow us to let them build the water tank on their dime, and then we will reimburse them with issuing debt in another 4 or 5 years to repay them for that water tank once it's built. If we don't refund these bonds, we don't have that debt capacity to do that kind of agreement. So I think there's some really strong reasons for us to do this refunding. And again, this parameters resolution just tells me under which parameters, outside parameters, you'll allow me to go to market. What happens is I decide with our municipal financial advisor, John Crandall, who works with Stifel Nicholas, to decide when's the best time to go to market. For us, I've done this a lot, and the best time for us to go to market is really the first couple weeks of January. Bondholders are receiving their principal payments December 15th on the majority of investments. They get them June 15th and December 15th. They kind of hold on to them during that holiday season, and then they start reinvesting them January 1st. So you have a lot of buyers on the market and not very many sellers, because a lot of government employees like to take some of that time off. So it's really a prime time for us to get in the market, get a really good interest rate, and allow us to stabilize that cash flow in the water fund, which I'm super excited to give to you. So we've minimized the motion recommended because the name on this resolution is very, very long. So we have summarized it in the motion that's on this presentation, and I am open to questions if you have any.
Councilmember Whitelock, did you have a motion?
Yes, I will give you a motion. I move to approve resolution number 20-72, authorizing the parameters by which the council authorizes the issuance and sale of a Series 2021 water revenue refunding bonds. This issuance is intended to refund the Series 2013 and Series 2017 water revenue bonds.
Motion by Councilmember Whitelock, second by
I'll second.
Councilmember Jacob. Any discussion to the motion? Councilmember Green.
I just want to make sure that for anybody who's tracking the meeting, that what this does is that we're not issuing new bonds or more bonds. We're refinancing old bonds to get a better interest rate, to lower our debt payment, and it will help us so we do not have to raise water rates, as at least the way I understand it, to cover some of this stuff. So I think it's a good thing, but I just wanted to make sure that we're clear that we're not borrowing new money. This is a refinance to get better interest and to lower our debt service payments.
And that's perfect, Councilmember Green. That's exactly what it is. It's similar to what so many people are taking advantage of right now with their homes and mortgage rates being so low. Refinancing their home and being able to make that savings over time. We are doing that same thing. We are refinancing debt that has currently existed since 2013 and 2017. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, well, with both the motion and the second and not seeing any other hands up to discuss the motion, let's turn to Mr. Anderson for a vote.
Thank you, Council Chair. So on this resolution, we'll start with Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Council Chair McConaughey.
Aye.
Councilmember Pack.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
A resounding yes.
Councilmember Worthen.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
And Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
All right, let's move on to our moderate income housing plan, or moderate income housing annual report. We haven't heard much about moderate income housing today, so we probably should. Mr. Gardner, it's been a
Okay.
week or two since we've heard from you.
Yes, it seems to be a theme, and so luckily the we won't have to redo the plan for a few years. But this report used to be required every other year or biennially, as the state would call it. But now the legislature wants to hear every year how the city is doing on moderate income housing. And as you can see, I put in the second bullet point, all of the cities and towns and municipalities and whatever who are metro townships who are required to do that. And what the main thing it needs to come out of this is the 5-year projection of the moderate income housing needs and what goals the city is meeting. So if you could go to the next slide. Okay, and so this is the revised estimate of population. It's projected on population growth of West Jordan, and so by 2025, just about 2,600 new housing units will be needed in the city to keep up with our current population growth. And of those, as you can see, 187 new units will be needed for extremely low income, and that's what HUD states is less than 30% of the area median income, which for Salt Lake County is $84,000. And then 392 for households between 30 and 50% of the AMI, and 375 units between 50 and 80 AMI. So next slide. And so if the city's also made progress in the last 4 years. In fact, we met our goals or what was required by the state according to their 5-year calculator in the last 4 years, actually. And the city's created 150 units in excess of people less than 80% of the AMI, 475 units in the less than 50% category, and 75 units in the less than 30% category. And, to be quite fair, some of those, almost all of those units are in the for rent product category. What we have to do is quite extensively look in the city to see what is being done, where people are occupying. And so as planners, we will spend some time looking on Zillow and KSL and other real estate websites to see what is for rent and what people are renting in certain neighborhoods. Now, we're not looking for the legality of it, whether it's illegal or not, because most of them are, but we're looking to see what is being made available to these populations. And a lot of the stuff in the less than 30% category are basement rental units. So you can go to the next slide. Okay, and so again, the report as you have it, it said, describe any efforts the city has made to utilize a moderate income housing set aside in what we used to call RDA, but now it's Community Reinvestment Agency. And so I talked to our Economic Development Department, and what they told me is there's less than $50,000 saved right now. The city usually collects less than $10,000 a year in the housing set aside, and that's 10%. I think a lot of this funding is still under the 20% of the TIF that comes back needs to be housing set aside. And so less than $50,000 would not be a significant amount to work on any kind of moderate income housing project, but the city can, I believe, I'm not an accountant or a finance person or in economic development, I think the city can build this savings up until there's a project that the city would like to participate in. And just as a side note, there's another RDA or CDA area in the PayPal or aligned energy that will start coming online in 2021 to pay some increment. Next slide. And so these are just some of the goals out of the LUDMA that are, I think there's 23 goals that the city can look to implement in their city to help in the creation of moderate income housing. And so the city, this first one, create or allow for reduced regulations related to accessory dwelling units in residential zones. Councilman McConaughey, that's also something we've talked a lot about for the last year. And what I was made aware of yesterday, and I don't know all the particulars of it, but I've heard that a legislator has proposed some kind of legislation that I don't know how far it'll go, and I don't even know what it mandates. And so that causes me some kind of concern when the state does those things, because it takes the control away from the local population or the city that I think would be better to determine what they want to do. Second bullet point, allow for high density moderate income residents in commercial and mixed use zones. We have the city council approved the residential overlay zone that can be used in SC3 and SC2 districts. And we have received some interest in a couple of sites in the city. So I think the city council will be seeing that probably early next year, maybe in the spring of next year for consideration, and encourage higher density or moderate income residential development near major transit investment corridors. Of course, across the street from city halls, that's the zoning on that encourages higher density residential development. Certainly, Jordan Valley TOD, which is actively being constructed, encourages that. So these are three that the city is doing. Next slide. And then the last slide, reduce parking requirements. I know we talked a lot about this, but the city already does it. In the TOD ordinance, it reduces the parking requirement in the TOD zones. I know we had a lot of discussion on that, but it is a goal the city is implementing right now. Implement zoning incentives for low to moderate income housing in new developments. So with the approval of Jones Ranch and with their development plan and development agreement, they have agreed to between 5 and 10% of those units will be for low to moderate income housing units in new developments. And this is, in my estimation, something that we need to make the legislators aware of, that we are doing this in new developments. All of our new developments just aren't going to be for $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes. A good percentage of the homes will be, but the city is also making way for these more dispersed mixed income development, and people that want to move up in the same neighborhood. They can start in one of these homes as what we used to call starter homes, and then they can move into in the same neighborhood if they want. And then preserve existing moderate income housing. If you can go to the next slide, I think I have some. No, but what the city does is spends a great deal of its CDBG grant money on preserving moderate income housing, and that is through the assistance program that will repair roofs or water heaters or furnaces, put grab bars on for older people, help with handicap accessible housings, and all of these things are for income qualified people, and they have to be in that moderate income housing range. And I think last year the city spent close to, or a little over $200,000 a year doing that. And so I think that the West Jordan and the city council is to be commended for certainly looking at these things and being willing to do the part to help those and at least follow LUDMA and help people from a low to moderate income housing be able to reside here and be able to continue to reside here. And so, council, that is my report. This is due by December 1st, so I would ask for an approval of the resolution if you feel so inclined to do so. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. It looks like we've got a couple questions or comments. We'll start with Councilmember Green, and then we'll move on to Councilmember Whitelock.
Council or Chair McConaughey, can you go back a couple of slides? I have a question for one more, I think. That one. Mr. Gardner, I know you mentioned a couple of things. I was just wondering, does the IOZ also fall into that third bullet, allowing for the higher density?
Yes, absolutely. And
Right.
that is one, so I think, Councilmember Green, the city council's been very conscious of, sometimes we get the bad rap, well, you don't allow apartments anywhere, which is just essentially not true. What the city council is controlling is where they want the higher income development. So yes, the IOZ is a perfect example of what fits into that goal. So.
I just wanted to make sure we're getting all the credit we can get when it comes to the legislature. Never mind.
Councilmember Whitelock.
My space bar isn't working either, Kelvin. A couple of things. First, I want to thank Larry for getting this to us in a timely manner this year so that we have time to look at it and get it in on time. And so the goals that we're choosing are the ones that you listed, right, Larry?
Those are so of the 24 recommendations under LUDMA, these are the ones the city are actually meeting. So I don't think you need to do anything different than what you're already doing, because with the different zones that have been established, those different toolbox items, along with the preservation of moderate income housing with the funding of block grant money, and then the reduced parking requirements, I think that those are ongoing things because West Jordan still is developing around those sites. So I think if you just keep those goals in place, you're going to satisfy the requirements of the state law. So.
Great. Then I have a request that the mayor have someone, maybe it will be you, Larry, I don't know, but the mayor have someone do a quick fact sheet that can be mailed to each of our legislators in West Jordan that represent any of West Jordan, even if it's just 3 houses, and that Ms. Baker has a copy, actually has a few copies, that if she is with other legislators, that can be given out, because this is important information for them to have, as you indicated. But the best way to get it to them is a quick little synopsis, short little bullet points, no more than a page, that they can look at and keep on their desks while they're legislating. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll leave that decision up to the mayor and Corbin. I think, I volunteer Tawny. I think Tawny would be.
Yeah, and I'll just follow up with the mayor to ensure it gets done.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Gardner, or perhaps a motion?
I'll give you a motion.
Councilmember Whitelock.
I move to approve resolution number 20-73, accepting the moderate income housing annual report for 2020 and its exhibits for submittal to the State of Utah Division of Workforce Services, Housing and Community Development.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Whitelock, second by Councilmember Worthen. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none. Mr. Anderson, can you help us vote?
Absolutely. So Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Councilmember Pack.
Yes.
Councilmember Green.
Yes.
Council Chair McConaughey,
Aye.
and Council Member Worthen.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Larry. All right, next on the agenda, we have remarks. And then if the council does not have any objection, during the work session, we ended up having to forego new business after remarks. If there's no objection, I'd like to touch on new business. So with that, any remarks council would have? I'm seeing Councilmember Pack's hand is up first, so we will start with him.
Well, thank you, Chair. I am just very grateful for all of the kind emails that were sent to City Council from staff, employees in various departments, full-time, part-time employees. It was wonderful to hear the stories and examples of how a little Christmas cheer bonus is helping them and their families. And I was really moved and touched and grateful that they would take the time to email us. It was a pleasure responding to each of them and just thanking them for the work that they do to make our city a great place. Definitely invested employees. And I'm grateful that we can work hard for not only all the residents that we represent, but also be aware of the employees and their lives and circumstances. So many thanks to the mayor and to Mr. Lee and everyone involved in ensuring that no one was forgotten. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
And at this point, I can just say ditto to Councilmember Pack. It's just been great to receive those emails and hear of how it will impact their lives or their teammates' lives. So I just want to say thank you for all that have been so gracious. I also want to once again say, please, whether you think they work or not, even if just mentally it helps someone else for you to be wearing a mask correctly, it's a really nice thing that we can do for one another. And many people, the mayor said 1 in 60 of our own West Jordan residents are infected with COVID. That's a high number and people are dying. So please, please wear a mask, wash your hands, show kindness. Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
I was just, I can ditto what Councilmember Whitelock and Councilmember Pack said, but I do want to thank the employees. They're doing an amazing job, and we appreciate them helping the city be a great place to live. So once again, thank you, and thank you for all the kind words. Some of you I've never met. I hope I get to meet more of you. And I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving next week. That's for everybody. And I will try to get my video done tonight and get it over to Tawny. So, and if anybody has not done that, there was a request if you missed the email. So I think they're trying to do a video for the residents. So don't forget that. I think her deadline is tomorrow sometime. So don't forget to get that done and get something to our community engagement people.
Thank you. Councilmember Worthen.
So I want to give my shout out. I would have been better if I followed Kayleen, but that's okay. My shout out is to all those mask wearers out there, because although we all know it sucks, I have not met a person yet that enjoys wearing a mask, but I haven't met any bank robbers either, so that's a good thing. But nobody has said to me how much they love wearing their masks. So God bless you. Thank you for doing it. I appreciate you thinking of me and others out there as you're wearing those masks. And I want to wish everybody just a safe, happy Thanksgiving. And, you know, we're going to get through this. There is light at the end of the tunnel. So, and I don't think it's as far out as 2025, but yeah, we're going to get there. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Let's start another circuit with Councilmember Pack.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up from Councilmember Green and Councilmember Whitelock and Councilmember Worthen regarding masks and the video. It was mentioned in the email to wear the video or wear the mask during the video. But if we record a video from our home and we're alone, is that acceptable? So that's a question to the mayor's staff, because I want to ensure that we're producing that which they are looking for. Could I please get a clarification on that?
Ms. Barker.
You are welcome to film that in the privacy of your own home without a mask.
I was in my car by myself.
And is any form acceptable instead of like on a cell phone? Can I do like a quick Zoom recording like we're doing right now and send that in?
You bet. Anything will work. You can do a Zoom, you can do your phone, whatever works best for you.
Okay, and just reply to the email that it came from on our council email.
Yep. Just reply to Marie.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right. So when you say any form will work, I've got my 8mm all set, ready to go. Should be seeing that shortly. I don't see any other council comments. I want to echo much of what's been said. Thank you, Mayor, for partnering with us as that bonus was addressed, given everything that's gone on throughout the year and everything that's been done by staff. It has been truly remarkable to see from our vantage point how staff have been prioritizing and working so diligently to take care of the residents who live here. It's a very different feeling than it's been in the past. And I think you can see the tone of the council has changed as well, as we've been able to partner a little bit more closely and see the efforts that staff have been going to. So thank you to all of staff for everything that's being done, and thank you to the residents for help and support and making sure that we have the resources that can be allocated to take care of the essential services that need to be made. Moving on to new business, we'll just quickly touch on these 3 items that are going to be coming up to the council here shortly. Mr. Langford, could you give us just the quick overview of these?
Certainly. Thank you again, Council, for your time tonight. These 3 items were reviewed by the Planning Commission last night, and all 3 received a unanimous positive recommendation. The first, the Trujillo rezone right off Redwood Road, 8601 South. It is just a small, you can see 0.12 acres from rural residential, 1 acre, one of those old rural residential lots that used to be on Redwood when Redwood was vastly different. The general plan actually already earmarks this for professional office. And so this proposed rezone is to just facilitate a little office building going in on that corner. And it should have some great visibility off of Redwood Road. Foundations Cove is, it's directly north of Reams, if you're familiar with that, and right off of just north of 90th South. And our professional office district, with the senior housing overlay, allows for some care facilities, and that's what the Cerebral Palsy of Utah is proposing. This is a little bit above and beyond what you normally would see in a rezone. Our senior housing overlay requires a development plan to go with it. And so you'll get to weigh in on some of the site proposals. Basically, it's a 3-story building. They're proposing, I think, 24 or 25 apartments to provide some on-site care for patients who are dealing with cerebral palsy. And then last but not least, we're doing a small text amendment to our IOZ. As we started to play with the IOZ, the interchange overlay zone, our engineers, both in development, review, and capital projects, feel that it's best that we revise some of the road standards that were previously adopted in the IOZ to better conform with what is more typical in our other developments around the city. So that'll help with maintenance and predictability of utility placements and things like that. So those are the upcoming land use issues that we're going to be bringing to the council soon. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Langford?
I do. Is the one on 2700, is that where a doctor's office is already right by Reams?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we look forward to seeing those on the agenda here shortly. Thanks, Scott. Is there anybody from the council who would like to return to the work session item that we are going to discuss ranked choice voting, or would the preference be to let that move to another agenda? We have no timeliness associated with this one. This was just for discussion.
I'd prefer to move it.
Same.
All right, seeing as nobody wants to stay here till 11 p.m., we will move this to another, we'll move that to another agenda. And let me jump the slides here. And just a reminder for those folks who are watching, if you weren't able to participate live during citizen comments tonight, we do have a couple methods you can use to reach the city council. There's a phone number that you can call and leave a voicemail that gets distributed to the entire council, or you can send an email to councilcomments@westjordan.utah.gov, and that also goes to all of us. We do have a couple meetings coming up. We have the city council meeting on December 2nd, 16th, and then we've got a couple meetings for January. We're also noting that Councilmember Worthen, oh, her hand went up. Would you like to remind us about your meeting on the 3rd? Let's see, you're on mute, Melissa.
Sorry, my space bar didn't work either. Sorry. No, that's actually not what I was going to say, but okay, yes, we do have a meeting on the 3rd. Finish and then I'll say what I have to say. Sorry.
That is it as far as the agenda is. So I would look to the council for a motion after we hear the comment from Councilmember Worthen, and then also Councilmember Lamb has his hands up too. So Councilmember Worthen first, then Lamb.
Yeah, this is just to council and staff and the people that I know. You guys know that I really enjoy council. It's just something that is, it's fun. I'm gonna say it for me. I'm a government nerd, have been since I think the day I was born. And I very much enjoy the company and being able to see you guys every other week-ish and other meetings that we have. It's very enjoyable to me. It gives me, I'm growing and learning and experiencing all kinds of new things. And I just wanted to thank all of you. And from doing it publicly, that's fine. I'll do it privately as well, but it's great. And I want you to know what a great experience it is for me to be on council. I've really enjoyed this year and I'm looking forward to the next 3. So just wanted to say thanks. And I appreciate all you've done for me.
Thank you, Councilmember Worthen. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to have a discussion at this point, but I do want to bring up that looking at the final meetings we have left, we do need to have a discussion about council chair and vice chair for 2021. I'm not sure if that's going to happen on December 16th or January 13th, but the new year does come up, and we did discuss having a discussion over whether or not to have a new chair next year and how that will work. So just a reminder as a council, that's something we should start thinking about and maybe make a decision about whether we start talking about that on the 16th or the 13th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Lamb. We do on our agenda tracker have that slated for the January 13th meeting. There's some questions and some support we're going to need from city staff and IT potentially. So that is definitely on the radar. Thank you. Okay. If there's nothing else, I would look to council for a motion.
Oh, I think I should give it to you. I've given you all the others. I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
Beat you.
You know, the way I heard it, it was motion by Councilmember Whitelock, and it sounded like Councilmember Worthen just barely slipped in. Sorry, Councilmember Green. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sure.
Crickets.
Okay. We stand adjourned.
Good
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Chris, I have a quick question.
Fire away.
When I'm trying to take my mouse cursor from my Surface to my new screen that Alan brought me, I'm making it go, but I don't know if the only way I can figure it out is to just throw it over there basically on the pad. Is there a way I should be doing it?
I have not had much good luck with Surfaces, so I wouldn't be a good one there.
Don't throw it though. You really should throw it.
Yeah, it might be the resolution of the monitors. As you're playing with the dual monitors and the setup, you can say this one is a little bit higher than that one. So if they don't align, it can flow a little bit more smoothly. But we can set up a zoom and kind of look through and see, so we can make it a little smoother there if you'd like.
Well,
You got
that's okay. I wondered if someone had an idea.
The other thing that we could do is some of the headsets have the little button on them, and it can be synced up so that you hit the button instead of having to hit the space bar. That's what I do. That's the only way I can stay on top of it. So we can
comfortable with it. I can come over to your house and fix that for you.
Well, I think I can do it. I just,
it's real easy, but it's easier to show you than to do it, explain it.
You know, I'm just learning.
You are.
Yeah, I would suggest having the mayor swing by and also bring another headset with him. I'm going to be having him stop by here to help with a couple electrical questions anyway. So yeah, invite him over. Wear masks. Wear masks. Wear masks.
I try to stay current.
Right. Good one.
That's
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Have a good night.
Personality, man.